Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Friday the 6th of May. It's results day of local elections and this is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We are live across the whole of the UK, of course, on your TV, on your radio and online. So whatever you're doing today, you can take us with you so you don't have to miss a thing.
Coming up this morning, we will have all the latest results from the local elections. Has it been as bad for the Tories as some predicted? And have the Labour Party done as well as they hoped? Our local reporters are standing by right across the country.
The Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko has defended the war in Ukraine but says it's dragged on too long. This comes as the UN says a third operation to get civilians out of Mariupol will take place today.
The Bank of England has warned that communities across the UK are facing what they call a sharp economic slowdown as the cost of living crisis continues. We want to hear your stories about what you are struggling with or how you're coping.
Well, we are the People's Channel, so your views drive what we do. So make sure you get in touch today. You can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews. So our main news today, and more than half of the English councils where elections were held have been counting overnight, the rest beginning this morning.
Well, the Conservatives have so far lost control of 4 councils, with Labour taking control of 2 and the Lib Dems taking control of 1.
Well, in London, Labour's won control of Wandsworth from the Conservatives and they look set to take other key areas of control in the capital as well.
Yeah, Labour's also taken Southampton from the Tories, but at the moment is making only modest gains in other parts of England.
Well, counts in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland are expected to begin this morning, with all 32 Scottish councils and 22 Welsh local authorities being contested.
And in Northern Ireland, Sinn Féin and the DUP are battling to be the largest party in the Northern Ireland Assembly, with no seats yet to declare.
Well, let's get the very latest from Sunderland's elections with our North East reporter Rachel Sweeney. Good morning to you, Rachel. What's been happening there?
Good morning to you both. Yes, well, he's been the leader of Sunderland City Council, Councillor Graham Miller, since 2018, and he retained his seat last night. How are you feeling?
Still winning, Rachel, and still here. Thank you very much for having me on this morning.
There's been some tough competition, hasn't there? The big guns have been up here fighting for the patch, but you came out on top. Well,
I mean, the Conservative Party, I'm sure, will be thinking this morning, why did we send Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, the whole Conservative army into the ward of Councillor Miller? They did it because they expected to win, and we beat them. And I think that sends a proper message about how people in Sunderland are starting to listen to Labour again and voting for us. Our vote share was up to 43% last night across the city, which is putting us in a really good place, getting back to where we were pre-2019, because we had a terrible year in 2019. So I'm delighted that residents of the city are voting for us again.
And that's what you would say to people who say that the Labour stronghold, as it were, is weakening in the area, with you are losing seats.
We have in the past, and we lost seats here for many reasons, but the primary one was that we were not trusted. This is my opinion. We were not trusted to be the party of government, either as a council or, to be considered to be the party of government for the country. Now, with the local message that we've got, which is that we listen to residents and we're delivering what they've asked for, and they've had that for 4 years with me as leader, and it's clearly showing, allied to the fact that we've got Keir rebuilding trust with the people as the opposition leader. I think it's putting us in a very good place. So it was a great night last night to get that lift in the vote and not lose any seats to the Conservatives, even though they were saying they were going to force the council into no overall control. It was never going to happen.
Do you think that Partygate went in your favour?
Oh, absolutely, Partygate went in our favour. Tory ministers might have been saying all week, and for weeks actually, that it wasn't cutting through on the door. Well, it definitely cut through here. People were absolutely furious with the Prime Minister, absolutely furious with his inability to take responsibility, because whilst he says he takes responsibility, he does nothing. And allied to the cost of living crisis, where they could see that we were trying to come up with a plan to help with people with the fuel costs and how to heat the house and have some food. But Partygate was a big issue. Certainly in Sunderland it was.
Now, another issue that you faced, and something that our viewers and listeners can't actually see, is this big cast on your leg. So you haven't actually been able to campaign as you usually would. Have you been concerned?
I've been called the castinator. I've had the cast on my leg for the whole 6 weeks of the campaign, and it's just a foot infection that basically went badly wrong, and I have an open wound on the sole of my foot. It stops you walking, and therefore it stops you knocking on doors, and it makes life awkward for talking to people. But I've done what I could. I've had a great local team who've supported me and done a lot of that heavy lifting, and you've got to knock on doors and ask people for their support. I've done it for 16 years, so I did what I could, but it was uncomfortable for that period.
I bet it was. One thing that you have been criticised for in the papers is the rent on the offices, the headquarters. Yeah. What message do you have for people who have said that £2.4 million rent a year is too much? Well,
council's not paying £2.4 million. That's the total rent. But what we've got is that we've got the Department of Work and Pensions, we've got Gen 2, our social landlord, we've got Together for Children, our children's services standalone body in there, and we'll have others. We couldn't stay in City Civic Centre any longer. It was falling to bits and it was costing us a great deal of money just to keep it safe. This is effectively just like a mortgage. We're mortgaging the City Hall, and in 35 years we own it. It's ours. If there are any repair costs, it's for other people to pay. So we pay that figure every year with our partners, and it's a good use of money, cost effective.
While we're on the subject of money, what can you say to people who voted for you? What can they expect?
What they can expect is that we'll continue in Sunderland, in Washington and in the coalfield, listening to them. We will be talking to them more, because over the last 4 years, that's the one thing I've realised. People want to be talked to, they want to be listened to, they want to feel that they actually are having a say in what we're doing as a local authority, and we will continue to deliver what they're telling us is important. That's what we're going to continue doing. They will continue to see regeneration. So the new railway station started getting built a couple of weeks ago. We're going to be building the new hospital, we're going to be building the new Housing Innovation Construction Skills Academy, and we'll be developing out into the other areas of the city. So there's a lot more to come.
It must be quite interesting being council leader here in Sunderland, because people are so politically engaged, aren't they? That with Nissan being such a huge employer, people are interested in what happens economically.
They are, and so they should be. Anybody who thinks that the electorate are fools is going to get a sorry surprise. Now, I genuinely try and talk to everyone. The more people that we have talk to us and tell us, that's right, Councillor Miller, or that's wrong, you've got to listen to people. So I'm delighted that they're so switched on up here. It's part of the charm of the North East. You work hard, play hard, and you can have a good time with them.
That is absolutely true. Now, let's round off by asking what you're going to do to celebrate.
Well, I'm going to the Stadium of Light tonight to watch Sunderland stuff Sheffield Wednesday. Sorry, Sheffield fans. We're going to hammer them at the Stadium of Light so that we can hopefully progress into the playoff final.
And one last thing, have you heard from Keir Starmer yet?
Not yet, no.
Are you expecting to?
I'm sure I'll be speaking to him, yes.
Great. Thank you so much, Councillor Graham Miller, for joining us here on GB News. I'll be back in a couple of hours with more.
OK, Rachel, thanks very much indeed. I mean, it's fascinating, Anne, isn't it, when you look through the results that we have so far, and it just depends which party you talk to as to what spin you're going to get on all of this.
Absolutely. They always do that, don't they, politicians, on results day. They spin it so that they can say it was a triumph for them, even when it patently wasn't. But, I mean, this one looks as though it's going to be a bit iffy and arguable.
I think
generally.
So, because although the Tories are losing lots of seats and a number of councils, and that was expected, and within the electoral cycle, this is what happens. But what Labour hasn't done, or doesn't appear to have done so far with the results we've got in so far, is actually make any inroads.
Absolutely. It's almost as though the voters... And, of course, there's been a low turnout, we think, don't we?
Oh, yeah, very low.
It's almost as though the voters just are so fed up with politicians at the moment. They just didn't... They don't know who they really do want. I don't know, that's certainly how I'd feel, I think.
I mean, we're talking... that turnout figures were something like 25%, which is ridiculously low.
Well, it isn't surprising at the moment. We have had politicians doing the weirdest, stupidest things recently, and you just don't feel that you want to cross the road for them, let alone go out and vote for them, unless you are already that way inclined, unless you are already committed. It's interesting as well, though, just about trying to do the campaigning with a cast on your leg.
Yeah.
Mobility is a big feature for the Queen at the moment. They've announced that she's not going to attend the garden parties this year because there's an awful lot of walking and going up and down steps involved. And it's thought that mobility issues, she's obviously said, I don't think I can do the garden parties, but she is going to do the state opening of Parliament, and there's a lot of stairs in that as well. And they're trying to figure out, apparently, the shortest route for her, where she gets out of the car, but you have to go up a lot of steps to get into the Houses of Parliament at the moment. And whether there's a lift involved, whether she'll be able to do that, or whether they will actually bring out a wheelchair.
Oh,
I can't imagine she wouldn't like that.
She wouldn't like that, no. But I'm sure they'll have to find something. I don't blame her about the garden parties, though. It's a lot of work. She's 96.
It is a lot of work. Have you ever been to one where you see her? You have, haven't you?
No,
Oh, I thought you had. And, but you've been to one of those do's. Wherever she goes, she is on duty all the time, and there's an awful lot of shaking hands and talking to people. And if you're having to negotiate steps, and you probably walk miles doing a garden party.
Oh, I should think so.
So she's not doing that, but she is doing the state opening of Parliament. It would be very interesting to see how much we see of her, because there's a lot of walking, as I said, involved in that too.
I'm just glad she's taking it a bit easier. Good on her. OK, it is 11 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with the headlines today then, and mixed results coming in the local elections. The Tories have suffered losses in London, as well as across other parts of the country as well. Labour's lost hold to the Liberal Democrats.
Gosh.
Dozens of Conservative councillors have lost their seats, with some local leaders criticising the Prime Minister and the cost of living crisis.
The Ministry of Defence confirms Russian forces are continuing their ground assault on the Azovstal steel plant in Mariupol for a second day. Earlier, Moscow claimed it would only seek to seal off the plant, but Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says shelling is actually underway.
Oxford University is offering a fully funded graduate scholarship scheme for Ukrainian refugees. Applications and course fees will be waived for 20 students who'll also get a £7,500 a year grant to support living and study costs.
Taking a break from social media platforms for a week can improve your mental health, according to new research by the University of Bath. The study found those who stopped using platforms like TikTok, Instagram and Facebook had reduced levels of depression and anxiety.
I can understand that about social media. I came off it about a year ago, and I'm tentatively went back on it with GBNews starting when I came here, because I wanted to engage with what you were saying. But I'm not on it a lot.
It doesn't surprise me, because the people I know who are very, very engaged with social media get so tense and uptight. You know, whether you're liked or something, or whether you gained followers or whatever, and you just think, it's not worth it. It's not worth it.
I think it can be a really useful tool. I mean, like, if you want to talk to us, then it's a good way of doing it. But when it's the people who are absolutely so into it that it's all they can do is tweet and Instagram.
And have you ever gone out to lunch with somebody and they put their phone down there and they're watching it all the time? They're talking to you, and but it's completely dominates their whole life. And I can see that it's not good for you. And that, you know, you'll find yourself going to the doctor in the end, and the doctor will say, just come off social media for a week.
Yeah.
On a prescription.
Can I say something controversial? You know that was it Oxford or Cambridge? Oxford. And the fully funded Ukrainian
grant.
I mean, look, I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all, but what do they do for UK students? How many UK students get enough support to get to a place like Oxford? And I just wonder if... I mean, maybe there is. Maybe there's 100 places for UK students. I don't
think
know.
So.
But, you know, I sort of think it's all well and good doing it for other people.
Oh, that is controversial.
But what happens to our lot? I don't know. If you've got the answer, if you know, GBViews at GBnews.uk.
Because presumably they're paying for all of the tuition fees.
Yeah.
And anything like that. And also, wasn't it £7,500 for living, which is good. It's a very good deal.
It is a very good deal.
Why for Ukrainian students and not for British ones?
Yeah, plenty
I mean, there are scholarships and things like that, but
you do wonder. You do wonder.
What do you think? We'd love to hear your view.
Now, the United Nations says a third operation to pull civilians from Mariupol is due to take place today as fighting for control of the local steelwork plant continues.
Yeah, local reports suggest up to 200 civilians are currently hiding in bunkers within the plant. The war, according to Belarusian leader and key Russian ally, Alexander Lukashenko, is dragging on. So could the tide for Ukraine finally be turning?
Well, let's talk to former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence, Major General Chip Chapman. Good to see you, as always, Chip. Look, in terms of Mariupol, is it looking increasingly like its time has now come?
Well, the last time we spoke on that was day 58. It's now day 72. Putin declared victory on day 58 and not a fly would get out of there. So it's always premature in terms of the fighting capacity of Ukraine and a lot of the stalled operations. I think it will fall, and Putin will probably declare a victory anyway ahead of the 9th of May Victory Day, so that he's got something to sell on that day. That is, that he has raised up and gathered in the Russian people. He's prioritised those in the Donbass and the Crimea. He's enlarged his territory, and he's got that land corridor which Mariupol represents. That's its significance.
Obviously, he will spin it the way he wants to look like an amazing triumph or victory, but it's not compared with what he would have wanted to achieve, is it?
No, I don't think it is. I mean, I think it can be actually spun the other way. It is a powerful symbol of Ukrainian resistance, and it shows you can counterpoise that against the Russians actually abandoning ship on the Moskva. So it's really just shows the Russians' ability to reach out and destroy rather than their ability to capture and then hold and govern. And that is their dilemma for the future, even though they might be successful in the Donbass and along that corridor to Crimea. They will always have a flank which is open, and that gives them a great difficulty for the future.
What are we to make of the comments from Lukashenko in Belarus? Because it does sound a little bit like he's starting to break ranks.
Yeah, it does. You don't want to be associated with defeat. And of course, originally, this was the thunder run to Kyiv, which would knock the political polity over by D+3. And in early March, we had two conditions which were given to Zelensky by the Prime Minister of Israel, which were a total victory for the Russians and unconditional surrender. They've rowed back from that to go for the things that they've had since really D+11 on the 10th of March, which is that Ukraine should not join any international organizations, by which they mean NATO and Ukraine, and that they must recognize the independence of Crimea and the secession of the Donbass. Now, I think one of the things which is an option for Putin on the Victory Day on the 9th of May is to actually declare that the Donbass are annexed. That would probably be popular at home, and he needs to be popular at home. I don't think he will mobilise. That also is one of his options, but that has both military, political and societal risks attached to it. Everyone in the major cities who have avoided this war in terms of being conscripted would then be part of it, and it would come home to people in the way that the propaganda machine and the boys who are dying from the sort of rural areas we've not seen in sort of elite Russian society.
If Putin does make that sort of announcement on May 9 and claims it as some sort of a victory, or as you says, actually announces that those areas are annexed now, what will NATO's reaction be, or will we simply not do anything?
Well, we look at things in four ways. We call it the DIME paradigm. That's diplomatic, information, military and economic. So what we will do is it will isolate him further diplomatically. It would probably lead to further sanctions. So both ends of the DIME, the D and the E, he would be in trouble. That would make him even more of an international pariah worry to annex it, because the annexation of Crimea in 2014 has never been signed up to anyone. The situation has changed now. People would take more and more measures if he were to do that.
I mean, it's a A very odd situation at the moment, isn't it? It's very difficult still, after all this time, to work out what actually is going to satisfy Putin, whether he will at any point sort of take a step back and say, right, I'm going to have to call it quits now. I can claim a sort of semi-victory and I'm going to leave it at that. We just don't know, do we?
No, but we know, obviously, why fighting stops and why fighting doesn't stop. And fighting stops either because you have a military victory, and Mariupol isn't that victory, or because the improbability of military victory. It also doesn't stop because you haven't had the sacrifices that you want, and you need a desire for an outcome which satisfies the leaders at the top of an organization. So he needs a sufficient victory to justify the cost and the sacrifice already made. I think he has already rowed back. It's got to be the Donbass, Crimea, and that land corridor in between. One of the maverick things he could do is actually go for a unilateral ceasefire if he were to do that and say, right, we've done that, now negotiate. That is one thing where he might fragment the international coalition in terms of the sanction regime against him.
Meanwhile, I think we are also amazed, impressed and staggered at the resilience of the Ukrainian people. We've been, over the last couple of days, still seen civilians coming out of that hellhole inside the steelworks. We gather there are 200 more probably currently hiding in bunkers. Isn't it absolutely astonishing, the strength of the human spirit there?
No, it absolutely is. And that's why I said earlier on about this can absolutely be spun by the Russians, both in terms of the military resistance and the civilian resilience that we've seen. You're absolutely right there, Anne. And that's why it will become a sort of heroic part, I think, of Ukrainian history in the future. So war really has two parts. It has a physical part and then there's a psychological part. And on the psychological part, I think the Ukrainians have shown themselves to be absolutely first class in the way that the Russians haven't so far.
And as a fighting force as well.
Oh.
Yeah, it is one of the things that miscalculations by Putin was that Ukraine didn't exist as a nation. And it's not armies that fight wars, it's nations that fight wars. So they underestimated the Ukrainians as a nation. And that plays into, again, one of the things that Russia may have to do. And that is one of the options on the night, is this general mobilization where Russia fights the war. But as I said, that has massive military, social and political implications for Putin should he do that.
What do we know so far as well of the Russian fighting forces? We hear very little about the way they are coping. Do you know?
Well, what we do know is that the key battleground really in the Donbass, that the operation there is stalled. What they wanted to do in phase 2 is to do an operational level maneuver, that is the level above tactics. And that involves either an envelopment or an encirclement or what we call a turning movement. They have neither the expertise nor the manpower to do that. They've not got the forces massed to achieve that. But taking Mariupol does free up 12 battalion tactical groups. They are not in a state at the moment to be the southern sort of part of that shoulder coming up from the south, but that is what they would want. But they still have no sustainability. They've got logistic issues, and that is why the Ukrainians are recovering ground around Izium. So there's a long fight to go in this, and we're still a long way from the point where the Ukrainians are able to take widespread offensive operations. They are doing local counterattacks very successfully, but again, not at the tactical level, not at the operational level.
OK, Major General Chip Chapman, good to talk to you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
And after the break, we'll be taking a look at how you can save money by freezing your food. First of all, though, the weather.
Good morning, I'm Aidan McGiven from the Met Office. It's a fine start in the south, but cloudier in the north with outbreaks of rain for central and southern Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. Brighter skies will follow as the rain clears during the afternoon. The rain is sinking slowly southwards across the country on the top of an area of high pressure. That means that increasingly the rain will fragment as it moves south, but it's certainly got some heavy bursts within it at the moment for Northern Ireland, for the central belt into southern Scotland, and then it reaches parts of northern England and North Wales by lunchtime. So damp afternoon to come for central zones, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland, the skies do brighten following that rain, albeit with 1 or 2 showers and a fresher feel in the far north and northwest. But it's warm ahead of the rain, increasingly cloudy, I think, but could still achieve 22, 23 Celsius for the likes of London. Mid to high teens elsewhere generally across much of the country. Into the evening, the rain does move south, but by this time it's just a weak feature, and so it's on and off light rain for most. And then it clears by dawn on Saturday. So for much of the country, it's a dry start to the weekend, clear spells, perhaps a chill in the air for Northern Ireland, for Scotland, for Northern England as well, particularly in any sheltered spots. And then Saturday itself looks, for the vast majority, dry and bright. A few exceptions, some mistiness lurking around the coast of West Wales and the southwest, perhaps, as well as the east of England. And cloud building in places, particularly central and southern Scotland, northern and eastern England. A few showers where that happens. But for the vast majority, it's looking dry, it's looking bright, and where we get enough sunshine, temperatures into the low 20s, particularly in the south, I think mid to high teens further north. Sunday's looking very similar, plenty of sunny spells, some outbreaks of rain in the far northwest of Scotland, otherwise dry for many, and similar on Monday.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It's 6:28, morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, live on your TV, on your radio and online. Now, as we know, the cost of living is rising. Don't we just know it? And many of us are going to be looking at ways to save money. Most of us, I would expect. Surprisingly enough, freezing food is one way you may be able to reduce your spending drastically, apparently. Let's talk to Kate Hall, founder of The Full Freezer, who joins us now. Good to see you. Now, why is freezing a way that we can drastically save money?
Well, the beauty of freezing, Stephen, is that you can literally press a pause button on your food. So people usually think that you need to cook a meal, that you have to batch cook in order to use your freezer. But the reality is that actually you can freeze individual ingredients. So it literally gives you that power to freeze that food and pause it for a day, a week, a month, a year, whatever you need to. So you can stretch out the use of it.
What sort of foods are we talking? I mean, because there are some things that we know you can freeze. Other things people aren't necessarily sure about. Though, oddly enough, the first thing that sprang to my mind was onions, because you often sort of use half an onion and things. Can you freeze all of that sort of thing?
Absolutely. So you can freeze almost anything. I've actually got a couple of examples for you. So things like potatoes as well. We waste 4.4 million potatoes every single day in the UK. So the fact that you can prep roast potatoes as if you were making them normally and then cool them down, pop them on a tray, pop them into your freezer, and then when you want to eat them, you can literally just take them from your freezer and put them into your cooker and then just cook them as if they were fresh. I've also got things like if you use half a tin of something, so say you just need half a tin of tomatoes for something, there I've flat frozen the rest of a tin of tomatoes. I've also got as well, one that might surprise people, is you can also freeze eggs. So if you had, a pack of eggs, particularly if you live on your own and you find that sometimes you just can't get through things quick enough, then it's an option. Freezing is always an option. So literally, you go through the range of different foods there are and you can freeze practically everything.
You see, that's the key, isn't it, to all of this? The idea that there is so much that we do just throw away, and sometimes not even because we want to. But, as you say, especially if you live on your own. So this could be a real money saver as far as that goes. I mean, any idea sort of how much people could save, actual pounds in their pocket?
Sure. So there have been studies done by WRAP, which is the Waste Resources Action Programme, and they found over the last couple of years, the average family is actually wasting around £700 on food that they literally just buy and then throw away.
Wow.
That doesn't surprise me terribly, because how many of us have got stuff in the fridge that, you lose track of, don't you? They disappear into the back of the fridge and you're absolutely wasting it. And you could, if you just thought it through, just bung it in the freezer.
Yeah.
That's it. The one thing that I tend to say to people is think about, as you're throwing things away, just stop and think, next time could I freeze that? Because the vast majority of things you can.
Is there any golden rule into how you deal with, I'm thinking particularly veg, when you get how you deal with it when it comes out the freezer? If you wanted to use tomatoes, for example, in a salad or whatever, if they just defrost on their own, are they all right?
No, that's a really good question. So you do usually have to cook with things, or you have to, for example, with fruit, you'd have to make it into a smoothie or something. But yeah, with your example of tomatoes, that would be something that I would usually give a good wash. I'd chop them in half or into quarters so they were small pieces, and then I'd actually pop them onto a lined tray so that I could freeze them so they're not all stuck together in a clump, and then pop them into a freezer bag. And then when you want to use them, literally just cook with them from frozen. So I find a lot of the time the place where people go wrong is actually defrosting things. The only thing that really you need to defrost is meat, and particularly big pieces of meat. But if you frozen ingredients such as your vegetables or any fruit or anything like that, you can literally just use it from frozen. So it's actually really convenient. It's just that thing of making sure that you've prepped it in a way that you can use it straight from the freezer. So I don't tend to encourage people to just throw things whole into the freezer, but if you chop them up first, and for vegetables, you also need to blanch some of them, which is basically putting them into boiling water and then moving them to ice water. And that stops them from sort of being as damaged in the freezer. It helps to preserve the quality.
I mean, most of us don't have those enormous freezers anymore. We just sort of have freezers that come with a fridge freezer, don't we? So you have to think about how you're going to store things inside the freezer, because again, they get filled up with cardboard boxes and things like that. Any good tips on how to maximise storage space in your freezer?
Absolutely. So the cardboard boxes is a really good point. If you are buying things from the shops that come in cardboard boxes, then basically remove the instructions for cooking and move them into a freezer bag, because that's going to allow you to be more resourceful with your space, shall we say. The other thing you may have noticed from when I showed you the items before is freezing things flat. So if you've got something that is soft or liquid, get a glass or a mug and pop the freezer bag into that, and then you can pour in whatever it is, lay it flat on a tray, and then you basically end up with a bit of a sort of filing cabinet of foods. If you write the name of what it is and always label your bags with what it is and the date, So you can label it across the top and then you can just flick through and find what you want. So I think when you use that process of having things in bags and freezing things flat, and particularly if you've frozen them open on a tray first, so you've not got things stuck in a big clump together, you can just use as much as you need. It makes the freezer space much more usable. You can fit so much more in, and it actually makes you want to use the food in it because you can access it. You're not standing there for 20 minutes trying to dig through for what you thought you had.
Kate Hall, I am inspired.
Yeah,
let me tell you. It sounds absolutely brilliant. A very clever idea. Really good to see you this morning. Thank you.
And do stay with us. Thank you very much. Yeah, I do the storing flat. I even freeze soup flat.
You see, I've never thought of it.
And if you do it flat, it defrosts so quickly. It's really good.
Oh.
Yeah. Or you do chili or bolognese or something. If the flatter you can make it, they're much more quickly to unfreeze.
Never thought of all that.
It's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. Look, we've got plenty more to come. We're going to take you through the papers in a couple of minutes. Pete Price and Joanna Williams are here.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A couple of quick hellos for you at 6:38. Jonathan's in Beijing.
Wow, watching us from Beijing.
Oh, wow. I work from home owing to the most recent COVID outbreak. A refreshing show with refreshing opinions. Bill's in Johannesburg. We get about it.
We do.
Poppy's in good old Sunderland. Love your show, says Poppy. Will there be more coverage throughout the day of the elections? Yes, there will. We've got a GB News local election special today from 10 through till 4. So everything you need to know.
Trace in Shropshire says, I love the show. I'm just sat here with my tea and toast watching you.
Lovely. I've got the tea.
It's the way to get it.
Toast would be very nice.
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, let's take you through the papers this morning. Joining us today, broadcaster Pete Price and author and academic Joanna Williams. Good morning.
Good morning, good morning.
Joanna, let's have a look at the cost of living in the Mirror, should we?
Yeah, well, this is in the Mirror, but to be honest, it's the front page of most of the newspapers this morning. It's the news that we're likely heading into recession. We've got the highest rates of inflation for 40 years. They're saying could top 10%. I mean, this is really so serious and having such a big impact upon people's lives. And I hate to say it, but all the statistics seem to be suggesting that it's just going to get a lot worse before it gets better. And there's a lot of kind of people demanding, something must be done. But I have to confess, I find it very difficult to see exactly what can be done, because it seems to me that lots of these problems are actually stemming from outside of the UK. I mean, we've clearly come out of this situation of almost global lockdowns, and you've got China, parts of China still in these very severe lockdowns, where you've got shipping unable to dock and unable to come out with exports. I mean, that's having a big impact on the economy. Obviously, the war in Ukraine. But I mean, we've essentially spent 3 years with most countries around the world pumping vast sums of money into the economy, and now looking shocked that we've got this rising inflation. I'm not an economist. I know very little about economics, but even I know that if you print money and give money away for free to people, essentially, for 2 years, you're going to have inflation.
Well, now we've got an interest rate rise.
Exactly. But it just seems I'm just really struggling to see how increasing people's mortgages is really going to help with the cost of living in the short term.
Well, it's that thing. You've got to. It pinches. Of course, it pinches. But if it curbs the rate of inflation, it'll pinch less than we'd be paying out in increased inflation.
Well, we hope
so.
You see, my worry is that the things that might have worked in years gone by, a decade ago, that is the kind of thing that would have had some impact on the economy. My worry is now we're looking at such a global situation that we could raise interest rates in this country. It could seriously add to the squeeze on our own living costs with higher mortgage rates, but might not actually do anything to lower rates of inflation at all, because that's stemming from other countries around the world impacting upon us.
Well, Pete, on the front page of The Times, Rishi Sunak is being urged to slash taxes to stave off the recession.
I agree with everything Joanna said. It's a world problem, and I don't know how anybody can sort of blame one particular person at all. What I do think, and I really do think, and I'm from an old school idea, where we need to look at our own lifestyle and start doing things for ourselves. Simple thing like switching lights off in rooms. I have been brought up to never leave a light on in a room. At weekends, as a treat, I put certain lights on to make that house look great. But things like that, you talking before about freezing food, these slow cookers. If I was in government, I'd give every family a slow cooker, tell them how to use them, because they're fantastic. We really need to take stock of our own lives. We live in a world now where we blame everybody else but ourselves.
You see, I agree with you, Pete, but there's also a problem with that, in that there's only so far you can go. I mean, there's lots of people I know who rarely practically never put their heating on, are already buying the kind of budget food that's reduced at the very end of the day, already doing all of those things. And there's only so much you can cut your cloth before you've actually got nothing left at all.
Well, that's the concern, isn't it? Thankfully, that's a smaller number of people than those people.
I must say, when we talk about this on the programme, people at home, and they will get in touch now, I'm sure you will, gbviews@gbnews.uk, so many people say, when I was young, we had to do, just like you say, we had to switch the lights off, we only had meat on a Friday, or, whatever. And they got by. In other words, we have been through times like this
and before. We didn't have benefits. My mother didn't have benefits. My mother was a single mother bringing me up, didn't have benefits. Maybe we live in a mandy-pandy world now to what we used to.
Do you think we've got lazy?
I think we've absolutely hit the nail on the head. I think we have got lazy. We have got to look at ourselves. And I understand what Joanna says, but the circles I move in and the people I know do not cut back. I've got to start cutting back. Oh, I love the ciggy. I mean, this is one of my few pleasures. My mum gave up cigarettes because she had to feed me, and did without. That was where I think we are living in a world where, and we blame everybody else but ourselves.
There's a big blame culture.
Yeah.
I know, there certainly is. Look, let's have a look at obese boozers, Joanna, in the Mirror.
Well, there's calls for doctors to start issuing much stricter advice to people who are overweight about their alcohol consumption and actually slash the daily limits. There's a certain number, I wish I knew. I've got to confess.
14.
14, thank you. 14 units. I think it's different for men and women.
That's a week.
14 units a week. Wow.
No, well, that's what a lot of people think.
Exactly.
It's like most people get through that in a night out.
No. And I think it's different for men and women at the moment. moment, isn't it?
No.
Oh, is it the same?
No, it's the same.
You're the expert.
I'm the expert and I don't drink.
Which you see, I'm showing my ignorance, which is a bit embarrassing. But what their demand now is that this is made a different limit, that people who are overweight or obese get a lower limit. Now, I get this idea of giving people advice, and certainly I think it's useful that we know that if you're overweight, you stand more risk of getting cancer if you're a heavy drinker as well. I'm just not completely convinced at how much this works. You know, do people just get to a point where they say, you know what, I've had enough of advice? And at the end of the day, if you are obese, then you're not really listening to the dietary advice anyway, so heaping on more advice.
So what you're saying, what's the point of giving advice?
Well, I'm just not sure about all these limits and this kind of expert guidance. I think we need awareness. We need to know about these things. But then I think also, you know, there's just a limit to what you can do. You can make people aware, but
it's interesting. It's interesting what Joanna says, because I think the world has changed also since the pandemic. I think people are saying, "Hey, I get one chance of this life. I'm going to have a drink. You know, I've just had enough of it. I'm going to do what I want to do because we only have one chance." But I think it's a great story. I'm so pleased I can use GB News to say to my friends, "Stop drinking as much as you're doing, all of you." That's my lot out the way.
Say it to you.
I've cut down an awful lot.
It's not just the alcohol content, is it? It's the calories in drink. Most people find if they give up drinking for a while, they automatically lose weight because there are so many calories in booze.
Empty calories, don't they?
That's right. But I mean, I've got to say, there is a bit of me with Pete on this. You know, you just likes to have fun as well. And I think sometimes we can get so ground down in misery and so ground down in all the terrible problems and health problems prompted by everything we do. At the end of the day, living is a health risk, isn't it? And actually just having a bit of fun once in a while, I don't think does people any harm.
No.
Is my
I'm not a doctor. I always sound like the holier than thou because I don't drink or anything, but I do have one or two little bad habits.
Do you not drink at all?
No. I gave up when I was 31.
So you're not going to have a glass of champagne at the wedding?
No.
What little naughty habits do you have?
I'm not going to tell you. I've got one or two little naughty habits. And I do think, well, I've got to live a little.
Go on, tell us a naughty habit.
No,
I'll find out in the interval.
It's nothing illegal or anything like that. Nothing illegal, but I'll tell you in the break. Can we look at picky eating?
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm sorry to use my age again. Toddlers bribing children to eat their greens has long been parental taboo. But they're saying now it's all right to do it. So we can give the child a little sticker or a toy if he eats one of his vegetables. I had it put there. You eat it. If you don't eat it, you don't eat until you eat that. And I had me cauliflower, I had me cabbage and everything. Once about mandy-pandies, the kids must learn to eat.
Do that then, Pete. Eat one of them, Pete.
I think you'd have to... I think that's been there for...
Oh, they've been there for about a month.
It annoys me that people talk about having to bribe your children to eat their vegetables. If you brought them up to eat their vegetables, they wouldn't even think twice about it.
No, I agree. I mean, that was always the routine.
It's not, it's like you're having to make a big deal of eating a vegetable. It shouldn't be. It should be what they eat from the very beginning.
I think you're right, because you're signalling to children by bribing them. You're signalling that there's something a bit wrong about this. It's a bit dodgy. You're probably not going to like it. It's a punishment.
Yeah.
If you just put the vegetables down and say, this is your dinner.
Yeah, and if it's been that way since you were weaned, then they wouldn't even think twice.
Also, when they give the chefs who give it al dente, so it's got a bite in it, cook it properly. Let them taste what it tastes like. My mother used to have the cabbage and it went through the strainer. It was overcooked.
Oh, my
old-fashioned cooking.
No goodness in that. No good. My granddad never liked the cabbage.
Yeah, but then the whole house smells of cabbage, doesn't it?
Well, it's asparagus. Let's start on that.
Oh, I like asparagus. I like asparagus. Mike has been in touch saying, I'm busy freezing down year's worth of asparagus, but where some fruits turn into mush when you freeze them.
Surely asparagus turns into mush if you freeze it.
Maybe you've got to blanch it.
Yeah, or maybe you put it in soup.
Meanwhile, Joanna, the Star, the headline appears to be budgie smugglers in a big helmet.
What's going on?
Well, this could be the good news story of the day, everybody. Hot weather forecast And because it happens so rarely, let's face it, that we get proper decent hot weather in
What's
this
the
country.
big helmet for?
Well, I think we've got to be very careful.
Because it's going to hail, apparently. It's going to hail.
Yeah.
We're going to have hail and then hot weather. So you've got to wear your helmet for the hail.
Oh, I see.
And your budgie smugglers for the hot weather.
I think the budgie smugglers are optional, though. I don't think we all have to go down.
Well, I don't think you and Anne in budgie smuggler, do you?
It's interesting, that story, but we're now living in weather. I went to an open-air play the other day in this weather, and it was freezing cold. You don't know what to wear, you don't know what to take with you. When I come down to do this, you never know whether to bring a coat or not.
Layers. You just have to take layers.
Layers.
I always bring me big
Sounds like my mother. Layers, son.
Layers.
Well, you've got to. And don't wear your coat inside, otherwise you won't feel the benefit.
I love
It's true, though. Right. Are we out of time? Someone tell me, yes, we're out of time. Really. We've
got time for dog food.
Me doggy story.
Yeah, do the dog food,
That's great.
please.
A company is offering lucky person £1,000 a day to munch on nothing but good dog food. The winning candidate will get £5,000 for 5 minutes. In the ingredients is sweet potatoes, lentils, rice, pumpkins, blueberries. I wouldn't mind that. I think maybe that might be the solution to all our problems with cutting down and cutting back.
Well,
I used to eat dog biscuits. Don't ask me to eat another one of them.
No, the dog biscuits do better than that. We're out of time. Dean Price, Joanna Williams. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
OK, let's return to the local elections, should we? The results from yesterday's local elections have been coming in throughout the early hours of this morning. Let's see if we can go straight to our guest, actually, because I think we're almost running out of bit time on this programme. We can talk to the Labour MP, Shabana Mahmood, the party's national campaign coordinator. Really good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed. Look, in terms of the national campaign, the problem for the Labour Party seems to be you've held your own, you've gained a few seats from what we've seen so far, but you've not made any massive inroads, have you?
Oh no, look, this is a real turning point for the Labour Party. We've made real headway in key battlegrounds in England, and I'm confident that when the results start coming in from Wales and Scotland, we'll be able to show progress across the whole of the UK in exactly the sorts of seats that we need to take off the Tories in order to win the next general election. So we've made progress in terms of key local authorities, whether that's taking Southampton, which has always been a real bellwether and tells us a lot about what we can expect ahead of the next general election. Winning the new Cumberland local authority, taking Wandsworth and Westminster and Barnet here in London as well. So we've seen real progress in terms of gains of local authorities, key local authorities, important for us for the next general election. But actually also when you overlay the results that we've seen that have come in already against what is needed for us to build on our 2019 general election result, which was one of our worst ever general election results, I think what we can show is real progress on the popular vote share in key parliamentary constituencies that we need to take off the Tories to form a majority Labour government. On these results, we would be winning in Workington, in Carlisle, we'd be taking seats in West Bromwich and in Wolverhampton, we'd be winning Hartlepool, we'd be winning Copeland. All these areas are very important for us to take off the Tories if we're going to make a majority Labour government at the next general election. That's why these are a really positive set of results for us, a strong foundation for us to build on, based on Keir's leadership, taking the fight to the Tories on the cost of living crisis. So it's a good night for us. We've got more work to do, but we've made real progress.
I mean, just looking back on what you had to do back in 1995 in the preparation for then Tony Blair winning in 1997, you were absolutely streets ahead of where you appear to be this time round. I mean, it does seem... I mean, a lot of the analysts are saying, look, you're just not in the position to turn around and translate this into a general election win in a couple of years.
Well, look, I don't think the comparison with 1995 is relevant here. You've got to look at when these seats were last fought in England, and that was in 2018. We've gone into these local elections already defending more than 50% of the seats that have been up for contention here in England. We've already got over 50% of the seats going into these local elections. So, with respect, when you're already at over 50%, the headroom that you have for further significant gains is obviously necessarily limited, but we have still made gains in key local authorities that we have taken off the Tories, and the important thing is to try and overlay what these results show us in terms of the popular vote with what would happen in parliamentary constituencies that are going to be the absolute marginal battleground seats for that next general elections. And there are a lot of Tory MPs currently in seats such as Workington, in Hartlepool, in Copeland, in Wolverhampton, in West Bromwich, who are going to be worried by what these results show is likely to happen to them at the next general election, because on these results we would be taking those seats off the Tories. And I think that that's the progress that we are able to demonstrate based on these results. Under Keir's leadership, we've made huge changes to the party, and that is now being reflected because voters are not only just giving us a hearing again, but actively and directly switching to voting for the Labour Party again. And so this is real progress for us, but we've got a lot more work to do ahead of that next general election. But the real comparator here is where we were in 2019, our general election result in 2019, and what these results show us would happen at the next general election.
I was going to say we'll leave it there. We're running out of time. Thank you very, very much for joining us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have it. It's always the way, isn't it, after an election, that everybody, spins it their way, don't they?
They do. They do.
Nevertheless, there was a very low turnout as well. I wonder what you think is the reason for that. Do you think people are just fed up generally with politicians and politics?
Look, are we going to pop and see our Bradley this morning?
Yes, time.
He's on your doorstep. Lovely Monmouth for Bradley today. Morning, Brad.
Morning, yeah, I've come to Monmouth because, of course, over the last 24 hours, it's been a really busy time for this place, like it has everywhere across the UK because of the local elections. In 2017, just 5 years ago, the Tories took majority control of Monmouthshire. Now I've come back to see if people are still thinking in the same way that they thought 5 years ago. Are people still voting for the Conservative Party like they did then? Kate Watts runs Quench Cafe here in Monmouth. Good to chat to you this morning. Come a bit closer for us. Come in. Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Just want to chat to you because yesterday, really big day for Monmouth. 90 polling stations open. Did you go out and vote? What was the turnout like?
Yes, I did. I voted about 5:30 last night, and it was really quiet. I was the only one in there.
You were the only person in there?
Yeah. Which is unusual because normally that time of night it's normally really, really busy, but I was quite surprised. I didn't queue. There was just me.
Wow, yeah, I'll just come in if you don't mind.
Yeah,
I'll just come quickly. Because normally at that time people are after work, they're coming in, they're voting. Can I ask you though, OK, it was a bit quiet, but actually the Tories got in 2017, they took majority control of Monmouthshire. What are you hoping for now? Because I should add, results aren't coming in until around midday today. They're not counting until 9 a.m. here in Monmouthshire. So what are you hoping for, Kate?
What, with the party that's coming in, or...?
What are you hoping in terms of the result?
Well, I hope that they retain the seat. I think they've done a fairly good job in the last few years. They've done quite a lot to try and improve the town. With new green spaces, with the high street, with the parks for the children and things. So yeah, hopefully they'll retain.
Well, good to chat to you, Kate. Interested to hear people's thoughts. I'll be hearing people's thoughts all morning here in Monmouthshire ahead of the count from 9 o'clock this morning.
Lovely stuff, Bradley. Thank you.
Do stay with us. We've got plenty more to come, including, of course, the latest on those local election results.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Morning. It's 7 o'clock on Friday, the 6th of May. It's results day of local elections, and this is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We are live across the whole of the UK. Of course, we're on your TV, we're on your radio, and we're online. So whatever you're doing today, you can just take us with you so you don't miss a thing.
So, coming up this morning, we're going to have the latest results from the local elections. Has it been as bad for the Tories as some have predicted? And have Labour done as well as they thought they would? Our local reporters are standing by right across the country, and our political correspondent Tom Harwood will be with us shortly too.
Later this hour, we're going to be talking to a former airline pilot after a Virgin Atlantic flight from London to New York made a U-turn after the co-pilot admitted he'd not done enough training. How serious could this have been, and why was he in the cockpit in the first place?
It's extraordinary, that, isn't it? Rangers have secured their place in the Europa League final after a fantastic win over German side RB Leipzig. We'll be live in Glasgow with our Scotland reporter David Donaldson.
We are the People's Channel, so your views really do drive what we do, so make sure you get in touch today. You can email gbviews@gbnews.uk. Lots of you have already. We're going to go through these pretty shortly. Or you can tweet us at GBNews. So, more than half of the English councils where elections have been held have been counting overnight, the rest getting underway this morning.
Yes, but the Conservatives have so far lost control of 6 councils, with Labour taking control of 3. The Lib Dems have also made some gains, taking Kingston upon Hull from Labour.
Well, in London, Labour have taken control of Westminster and Wandsworth from the Conservatives. They look set to take other key areas of control in the capital as well.
Counts in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland begin this morning, with all 32 Scottish councils and 22 Welsh local authorities being contested.
In Northern Ireland, Sinn Féin and the DUP are battling to be the largest party in the Assembly, with no seats declared as yet. That could be an interesting one to watch.
Well, right, for more analysis for these early results and what they could indicate, I suppose, for the next general election, is Chris Curtis with us now, Head of Political Polling at Opinium Research. How do you read it?
Well, I think it's basically pretty much what we expected, I think, when we were looking at those national opinion polls, which is the Conservatives have been struggling quite a lot recently. And most national opinion polls show Labour slightly ahead of the Tories, and I think roughly that's what's played out overnight. What's particularly interesting in this set of results is how that plays out nationally. So Labour's just about holding its own in a lot of those red wall seats. Of course, when the council seats were last fought back in 2018, of course, Labour won the red wall. So this would be Labour winning back some of the red wall seats if this was replicated in a general election. But in particular, this is a pretty impressive result for the Labour Party in London. Gaining Wandsworth, gaining Westminster Council. I think that's better than people expected, but let's not shy away from the fact that also, you know, in midterm with Partygate, with
they should have done better, shouldn't they?
I think there's a strong argument that Labour should be doing better right now if they want to be sort of heading towards getting a majority of their own at the next general election.
What about the Lib Dems? I mean, everyone who knows anything about politics knows the Lib Dems are they're a local election party. They're a campaign machine when it comes to the locals. Now, they've done pretty well in all of this. Could this be the beginning of a bit of a resurgence for them?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the Lib Dems tend to do well when the Conservatives are unpopular. And the Conservatives are fairly unpopular right now because of everything that's happened. And basically, when you've got a situation where the people have lost faith in the Conservatives, they haven't necessarily regained faith in the Labour Party yet. So there's a lot of those disaffected Conservative voters who are looking for somewhere to go. And I think lots of them last night, at least at the local level, decided to put their cross in the Lib Dem box.
Low turnout, sorry, I was just going to say. Low turnout, what does that suggest to you?
Well, I mean, there's always low turnout in local elections, and this is no surprise.
This is very low turnout, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'd always say as well is, you know, local elections do tell us many things, and they are indicative of that national picture. But we do have to remember that the next general election probably isn't going to be decided by the people who voted in the local elections last night. Actually, it's going to be decided by the people who didn't vote in the local elections but will turn out in a general election. What we're seeing is low turnout partly because there's many Conservative voters who, as I say, are pretty upset with the party right now, didn't feel that they could go and vote. But would those voters come out and vote for the Conservatives at a general election? Can Boris Johnson win them back? That's going to be the question for the next few years and for a general election campaign. And I think until we know the answer to that question, it's going to be very, very difficult to work out
how things will go. Anything could happen in the next couple of years, couldn't it, almost?
Oh, well, Chris, stay there as we talk to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who's snuck in as well. Morning to you, Tom. I mean, that's the really interesting point, though, that Chris raises. As the big parties look at all of this, you know, it's someone who may be a bit disaffected by the Tories at the moment saying, well, I'll vote for a different party for local elections, but when it comes to who's going to run the country, it could actually be a different story.
That's certainly true, and we know that a week is a long time in politics. The next general election is expected not for another couple of years. However, the mood music is what really matters, especially as MPs return to Westminster and start talking not only to their colleagues, but also to those people that may be in their constituencies who may have lost their seats at the local authority level. Now, that could change the mood music in Westminster, and clearly last night was a difficult night for the Conservative Party. What might be something that makes it less of a drubbing than it otherwise might have been, particularly for Boris Johnson when MPs return and looking at his position in Westminster, is that so many Conservative-held areas were not up for election last night. So really, if we're looking at the sorts of places that were voting, they did tend to be the areas where the Labour Party holds seats. It was London, it was the North East. And indeed, if we look across the big areas of the Midlands and many other parts of the country, potentially Conservatives won't be so affected by the results last night, simply because they didn't happen in those areas. So if we're talking about potentially letters going in, potentially the position of the Prime Minister, maybe that might be a little bit too soon. There's still a lot to happen, not only what happened in England, but of course the results that we're going to start seeing trickling in from Scotland and Wales later today and Northern Ireland over the weekend.
It's interesting, isn't it, that we were joking earlier about how when you interview politicians the morning after election results. They always spin it their way, no matter, even if they were drubbed, if that's a word, is it? Drubbed?
Yeah,
Received a drubbing, yeah. It works, thank you. But, I mean, even if they did really badly, they still always spin it that they did well. So you could argue, from what you were saying, that actually the Tories didn't do nearly as badly as you might have thought they would.
Well, this is the interesting thing. If we were to talk to any Conservative yesterday, they'd be saying we're going to do absolutely terribly, we're going to be wiped out across the country, and the Labour Party saying, oh, it's a really tough set of elections for us, we're going to do really poorly as well. And now they've sort of both swapped, and they're saying exactly the opposite thing because those votes have been cast. Now the Conservative Party is saying, well, actually, Labour is going backwards in the Midlands and the North, and that, we were going to lose Wandsworth anyway. The parliamentary seat associated with Wandsworth fell to the Labour Party last election in any case. So we're hearing these arguments, but ultimately, yes, this is a lot of spin. This is absolutely the parties trying to make it seem like it's a less bad situation. There are some legitimate arguments that the Conservative Party can make here. For example, there is a very difficult global economic situation. This is 12 years into some form or other of Conservative rule in this country. Mid-term elections, as this is, tend to see the opposition parties doing better. However, very clearly in London, the Conservative Party were hoping to at least hold one of Westminster, Wandsworth or Barnet. And as we speak, it appears they've lost all three.
Obviously, the results we're getting through are England. Chris, what are we expecting? Do we have any indications to what to expect for Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland?
So I think Scotland and Wales are, broadly speaking, expected to be slightly better for the Labour Party and slightly worse for the Conservatives than what we've seen in England. I think the headlines coming out of Scotland in particular are going to be quite damaging for the Conservative Party. They've struggled, I think, in Scotland to run a particularly good local election campaign, partly because they couldn't make their mind up about whether they supported the Prime Minister or not, which has made things very difficult. We're expecting the Conservatives to fall into third place in Scotland. That's going to be, I think, damaging. I think that's going to change the political weather in Scotland, given that the Conservatives have been in second place for about half a decade now. And in Wales as well, we have a slightly different dynamic. The Welsh government has remained fairly popular, the Labour government there. They did well in the Senedd elections in Wales last year, and I think we'll start to see that replicated across Wales as well. The one important thing to remember about Wales, though, is that there are lots of independent candidates in Wales, and we don't know how that dynamic will play out. At the last Welsh local elections, the Conservatives actually came in third behind independents because independents did so well. So that kind of dynamic does make it hard to make firm predictions for Wales.
What does it say for Boris Johnson? Will he sleep well on this or what?
I think that Boris Johnson could have had a better night than last night from what we're seeing right now. But I don't get the sense that there is that big move amongst Conservative MPs to move against him. I had heard several rumours back at the time of the last couple of days that Parliament was sitting a week or two ago, when Conservative MPs were getting very irritated, and there was all of this sort of parliamentary back and forth, particularly when the Prime Minister was away in India and you had that extraordinary vote that the Conservatives first whipped against and then stopped whipping, and there seemed a bit of chaos. I was speaking to some MPs around that time who were thinking that actually they do want the Prime Minister out, but they wouldn't move until after the local elections. Now, whether that will actually materialise or not, I'm not so sure. We will have to wait to see how this digests over the next few days. We are, of course, talking with not all results in, not even some of those expectations yet in. So it might be too early now to predict how Conservative MPs will react to these results.
Yeah. OK, Tom, Chris, thank you both very much indeed. It's fascinating. Lots more on that to come very shortly. But let's just bring you up to date with the other news. It's 12 minutes past 7.
The Ministry of Defence confirms Russian forces are continuing their ground assault on the steel plant in Mariupol for a second day. Earlier, Moscow claimed it would only seek to seal off the plant, but Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says shelling is underway.
Currently, Russian shelling and the assault on Azovstal do not stop, but civilians still need to be taken out. Women, children, many children remained there. Just imagine this hell. There are children there. More than 2 months of constant shelling, bombing, constant death nearby.
Oxford University is offering a fully funded graduate scholarship scheme for Ukrainian refugees. Application and course fees will be waived for 20 students who'll also get £7,500 a year in a grant to support living and study costs.
Well, the results from the local elections continue to fly in, but one of the key battlegrounds is the London Council of Wandsworth. Now, the area has seen 4 decades of Conservative control, but that has now changed. Our London reporter, Alice Porter, is there for us now. Morning, Alice.
Hi there, good morning. What a terrible night it's been for the Conservatives in London overnight. I mean, to lose Wandsworth, which has been held by the Conservatives for over 40 years, it's very much sort of iconic with the Conservatives. They've pursued a low council tax policy over the last few years in a bid to keep voters happy, but that's clearly not been enough for people as it's moved very much firmly to control by Labour. I think there have been a number of factors at play of why this has happened. It's important to stress that around 75% of people in the borough voted to remain. We have a government that is very much tied to Brexit, and I think that's been a significant factor, as well as all the other issues you've been discussing this morning, such as the cost of living, Partygate. The polls had very much suggested that Wandsworth was going to move to Labour, and that is exactly what has happened overnight.
OK, Alice, thank you very much indeed.
And, yeah, go on.
I was just going to say, because loads of people getting in touch.
About that Oxford University thing.
Yeah.
You've really struck a note, because Stephen was saying earlier that it's a very generous thing to offer that to Ukrainian students, the chance to go to Oxford University with everything paid, really.
Including a grant.
Including a grant.
And it's not a bad thing. I'm not criticising that at all. I'm just wondering, what do they do for other people?
And Jeremy says the Oxford grant just typifies the differential between support offered to UK residents and Ukraine nationals in many different areas. What is currently overlooked is that the Ukraine issue will ultimately boil down to economics. The war could stop tomorrow, but the financial repercussions will last for decades.
Yeah, they will. Phil says, where's the handout for our kids when they need it? And Wendy says, I can't understand why this country looks after everyone else apart from their own.
Jed says, I'm very angry at this. This is inverted affirmative action.
Andy in Kent says, it seems to me it's virtue signalling and bandwagon riding to get some headlines. We all support Ukraine, but at the moment it's not a few free student places that it requires.
Roger says, while I have total sympathy for the people of Ukraine, I agree with Stephen's comments about offering Oxford University places for Ukraine students. We should look after our own first. And then if places are available, we should consider others. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, it's just interesting, isn't it? So it's not trying to be remotely critical of helping out Ukrainian students. Not at all. But, just sort of think, well, what about our lot who are really, especially those from very poor backgrounds who are bright enough to go, but it's just the money just puts them totally off. I think it's so expensive.
Andy's point about it seems to be virtue signalling. It is a bit, isn't it? But the universities do tend to do that. I think Oxford particularly.
Yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, loads of other stuff coming up as well this morning on the local elections. Jim says the Tories are not listening. They're kind of deciding for themselves why people are turning away.
Sharon says, I've never voted in local elections, but I don't miss general elections. Many of my friends vote this way too. Why? It is interesting. It's the first time I'd heard it actually said when Chris Curtis said people don't tend to vote in local elections. And yet it's the local councils that particularly affect the way you live in your area, isn't it?
It's your council tax and your bin collections and how they can, what they do at the rubbish tips and all that sort of thing.
Rubbish collections, yeah.
Yes.
Tony in St Edmunds says it's not just about cost of living, but Partygate has cost the Tories, and until voting is compulsory, it will never be a true reflection of people's views.
I think it should be compulsory. I do, even if you have to tick the sort of none of the above box. You should go, and I'm surprised at you, Sharon. That you don't vote.
But you don't miss a general election.
You don't miss a general. Philip says, I think the more London votes for Labour, the more the North will vote for the Conservatives.
Really?
They're two different worlds, and the divide will get even bigger. the Conservatives have lost the big cities forever. They need to concentrate on the North and the Midlands. I totally
That's what
get
they're trying to do.
The two different worlds.
North and South.
North and South.
Very much so, I think.
Yeah. Whether this levelling up business will make any difference, whether HS2 will make any difference, because that should spread the wealth a bit more. That's the plan.
That's what it's designed to do, but nobody seems to quite see the point of it.
Well, no, and it's going to be another 20 years or whatever before it's finished, isn't it?
Yeah. Talking of which, I was not here on Sunday because we had a big family do. One of the things we did do was we went round all the old houses that we used to live in as kids. And there was one house that you could see the lady was looking a bit nervous because basically 4 enormous 4x4 cars, because that's how we were travelling. We arrived in like a convoy and we were all looking at that house, which used to be the one that we spent an awful lot of time in. And there was a lady inside looking very worried, frankly, because it looked as though we were casing the joint. And so we did actually ring the doorbell in the end and say, "Hi, we used to live here." And she said, "Yes, I know, we always knew that we lived in Anne Diamond's house." She said that. But it was lovely talking to her. I don't know if you've ever done that, been back to a childhood house?
No, well,
introduced yourself?
No. See, I like the idea of it, though. The difference is we grew up 2 houses. One was the Villas in Newton.
The Villas?
Which was... the Villas sounds right, it was a semi. It's just 2 semis joined together. And then we moved literally round the corner to where my parents are now. So we've only ever lived about... 20 yards away from
we did a little tour going from house to house to house.
And they're still there, so, it's all just still going on. Yeah. But, I've done it with college and things. Place I lived at uni.
Yeah.
And that's been quite interesting.
I wonder if you've ever done that. Have you revisited a childhood home? And is there a story to tell it? I'm really pleased that we did do it. I actually said to my kids, I sowed the blinking grass seed on that front lawn. I did. Remember doing it. 1968, that was. I spent most of July 1968 sowing grass seed. But there it is. It was living, breathing,
so hope it hasn't been ripped up and replaced.
No, I don't. I really don't think so.
Original.
No. Fantastic seeing an old house. Love to hear your story if you've been back and seen an old house.
Yeah, GBV's, gbnews.uk. Let's take a break, though, but there's plenty more still to come for you, including a flight to New York that had to make a U-turn. We'll tell you why
in a
couple
moment.
Of minutes.
Good morning, I'm Aidan McGiven from the Met Office. It's a fine start in the south, but cloudier in the north with outbreaks of rain for central and southern Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. Brighter skies will follow as the rain clears during the afternoon. The rain is sinking slowly southwards across the country on the top of an area of high pressure. That means that increasingly the rain will fragment as it moves south, but it's certainly got some heavy bursts within it at the moment for Northern Ireland, for the central belt into southern Scotland, and then it reaches parts of northern England and North Wales by lunchtime. So damp afternoon to come for central zones, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland, the skies do brighten following that rain, albeit with 1 or 2 showers and a fresher feel in the far north and northwest. But it's warm ahead of the rain, increasingly cloudy, I think, but could still achieve 22, 23 Celsius for the likes of London, mid to high teens elsewhere generally across much of the country. Into the evening, the rain does move south, but by this time it's just a weak feature, and so it's on and off light rain for most. And then it clears by dawn on Saturday. So for much of the country, it's a dry start to the weekend, clear spells, perhaps a chill in the air for Northern Ireland, for Scotland, for Northern England as well, particularly in any sheltered spots. And then Saturday itself looks, for the vast majority, dry and bright. A few exceptions, some mistiness lurking around the coasts of West Wales and the southwest, perhaps, as well as the east of England. And cloud building in places, particularly central and southern Scotland, northern and eastern England. A few showers where that happens. But for the vast majority, it's looking dry, it's looking bright, and where we get enough sunshine, temperatures into the low 20s, particularly in the south, I think mid to high teens further north. Sunday's looking very similar, plenty of sunny spells, some outbreaks of rain in the far northwest of Scotland, otherwise dry for many, and similar on Monday.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
"7:24, morning to you. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. We're on your TV, as you know, on your radio and online, so you don't have to miss a trick, whatever you get up to today."
Yeah. Now, this is an amazing story. A Virgin Atlantic flight from London to New York was forced to make a U-turn just 40 minutes into its flight on Monday because the co-pilot admitted he hadn't completed his pilot training.
Oh, how dangerous would it have been then for passengers and crew members had the flight continued? Let's talk to Alistair Rosenshine, former Boeing 747 pilot and aviation consultant. Morning.
Good morning.
I mean, look, on the surface, I have to say, you hear this headline and you think, oh,
what?
Heck, what is going on?
It's not Virgin's finest hour. It's easily done. The first officer had completed simulator training, he'd completed all the technical training, and he'd actually done some flights on the aircraft. However, he hadn't completed what we call line training. There's a final check. So he had to fly with a training captain. The captain he was rostered with wasn't a training captain. They only discovered that once they'd taken off.
How do you think they did discover that? Would they just have been talking with each other and then realised?
That's an interesting point. I really don't know. It's possible that they were talking to each other, you know, and then it transpired, or perhaps somebody on the ground worked out. But whatever, they would have been in contact with the company and made this decision to turn back, which is actually quite a dramatic decision.
I was
very
going to say,
expensive
because bearing in mind that there was just one element that he hadn't quite done, the line training or whatever it is, presumably it would have been perfectly safe to carry on.
I would say it was safe, but had something have happened, it wouldn't have been so good. But look, the point is here that he was trained, he was qualified, but Virgin has an enhanced training. So they do this additional training, which isn't actually entirely a legal requirement. But it does become a legal requirement once the airline has told the Civil Aviation Authority this is how they're going to do it. And so they decided to come back. But, you know, the question here is, what do the pilots actually say to the passengers?
But that's what I was going to say.
Yes.
What would they announce?
Well, it's very tricky. You can't really make an announcement to say, oh, by the way, one of us isn't qualified to fly this aircraft, so we're going back, because then it's, you know, shock horror. So they came out with this rather bland thing that some paperwork hadn't been signed off, which is, to my mind, totally implausible. But this was the excuse that was given, and they went back. And, of course, passengers are going to find out. But this is an ongoing thing with aviation, is, you know, you really want to be honest with your passengers, or with your customers, but sometimes you can't be. because you can't panic them. You can't make them frightened. That's not in their interest. And you know, this is
It's made me curious now, because I was kept on the... I was on an Iberia flight. She said, never fly with them again. But no, I have to, I think. But we were stuck on the tarmac for 3.5 hours, and all we were told was that there were paperwork. There was something wrong with the paperwork. So that's an excuse, is it, for something more serious going on?
That could, in fact, be correct. There may have been a load sheet problem or maybe a flight planning problem. There's a lot of paperwork involved, because aviation's the most highly regulated industry after perhaps the nuclear industry. I'm not too sure which of the two. They vie for it. It's competition. So you really got to dot the I's, cross the T's. You can't take chances. I mean, this aircraft we're talking about with Virgin carries 266 people. That's 266 lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You have to take it seriously.
We know how much airlines have been struggling. I mean, even before the pandemic and everything. The last thing they want to do is waste money. How much would this sort of return after 40 minutes of cost?
It's difficult to gauge it. I used to fly 747s, and I was £100 a minute.
Wow.
So this is a larger aircraft, and it's some time ago. But it's not cheap. Now, it becomes very expensive if you've got to put several hundred people into hotels, both ends.
Yeah.
So that would be very expensive. But I want to add something about this, because Virgin has taken a bit of stick over this, but it is still a very good airline with very high standards, and it's not an airline that I personally would ever be concerned about flying on.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we all moan. We moan about things like that and the delays. We moan about all the security measures and all the rest of it. But it is all designed to keep us safe.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day.
The bottom line is that you don't mind even delays when you're a passenger, as long as you're being told what's going on.
I know that communication thing is so important. Have I got time just to tell you one little story? When I worked for Britannia Airways, that used to be, it was before it became TUI, we were told at one point, we must tell the passengers the truth. And I was walking around my aircraft, it was a 737, I noticed the vortex generator, a little piece of metal like this, was missing off the top of the wing. So I went back to the flight deck and I looked at our book, and it said that you could only fly up to 23,000 feet. You used more fuel, so we wouldn't have made it to destination, so we had to have it repaired. And I asked the engineers how long it would take to do the repair, and they said 45 minutes. I said, how come so long? They said, we've got to wait for the glue to dry. It was like an araldite. So I thought, right, good. They want us to be honest. I'll be honest. So I said to the captain, I said, I'll talk to the passengers, you don't mind. So he said, OK, Alistair. So I said to them, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry about this delay, 45 minutes, but as you probably noticed, 2 engineers on the left-hand wing, they're just gluing part of the aircraft back on. As soon as the glue's dried, we'll be on our way.
Oh, my goodness, I would have got off.
With confidence. Alistair, really good to see you this morning.
Brilliant, thank you.
Vortex generator sounds quite technical.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Stay with us, we've got plenty more to come for you, including a look at the papers with Pete Price and Joanna Williams.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
It is, hold on, 7:33. There you go. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV, on your radio and online.
So let's bring you up to date with what's happening in the world. The Ministry of Defence confirms Russian forces are continuing their ground assault on the steel plant in Mariupol for a second day. Earlier, Moscow claimed it would only seek to seal off the plant, but Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says shelling is underway.
Currently, Russian shelling and the assault on Azovstal do not stop, but civilians still need to be taken out. Women, children. Many children remained there. Just imagine this hell. There are children there. More than 2 months of constant shelling, bombing, constant death nearby.
Oxford University is offering a fully funded graduate scholarship scheme for Ukrainian refugees. Application and course fees will be waived for 20 students who'll also get £7,500 a year in grant to support living and study costs.
The average house price increased by more than £3,000 last month. Halifax reports property values went up for the 10th consecutive month, the longest run of continuous gains in 5 years.
Taking a break from social media platforms for a week can improve your mental health, according to new research by the University of Bath. The study found those who stopped using TikTok, Instagram and Facebook had reduced levels of depression and anxiety.
And the man accused of attacking comedian Dave Chappelle on stage at the Hollywood Bowl has been charged. 23-year-old Isaiah Lee faces 4 counts, including battery and possession of a weapon with intent to assault.
Well, it is time to go through the papers now. And joining us once again, broadcaster extraordinaire Pete Price and the author and academic Joanna Williams. Morning, you two.
Morning.
Hello.
What's this in the Telegraph, Joanna, about Sweden?
Yes, so the World Health Organization has been looking at different countries all around the world, looking at the rates of excess deaths, how many people died over the course of the past 2 years of the pandemic, above the levels that you would expect in each particular country. And they found that in Europe, Sweden has had one of the lowest rates of excess deaths, and that's despite Sweden not having any real strict lockdown measures. Sweden's lockdown was a lot lighter than what we had in the UK. And the interesting thing is, you know, this is not just by a little bit, but in Sweden, the rates of excess deaths were 56 per 100,000 people. In Italy, it was 133
My goodness.
Excess deaths per 100,000 people. And Italy had a very strict lockdown. So I've got to say, you know, as a mother, it does make me wonder, why did we close schools? You know, what was the point? Why did we all live under all these very tight restrictions for such a long period of time, when actually you've got Sweden there showing us that it didn't really save any lives, as far as I can tell. You know, this is what these statistics seem to be
got to do with
showing
things
us.
like population density and all that, which might have been a big issue.
I mean, there are factors like that undoubtedly in place, but then when you look at the rates, Britain actually did better, you know, than Spain, Germany and Italy. So all that time during the pandemic, I mean, on Twitter especially, you're getting all these people calling for stricter lockdowns, quicker lockdowns, and you had this hashtag Plague Island, you know, why is Britain so terrible? Why are we the worst country in the world? And actually, comparatively, it seems like now that the numbers are coming in, we didn't really do that badly.
It would be still interesting to know how many people actually died of COVID, because we'll never get to the who actually died. If somebody had been hit by a bus and then went into hospital and then got COVID, that would be put down as they died of COVID. So we'll never know. But it was a minefield. The world didn't know what they were dealing with. And there is all sorts of inquiries coming up now. And it's wrong, in my opinion, because we didn't know what was going on. But I agree with you over the children. And we did the best thing by letting us go out, and we have more immunity now. Till the next one.
Till the next one.
Yeah.
There'll be another one. These things always come and go.
Pete, tell us about tips.
Yes,
Times.
very angry about this story, very angry. A lot of people out there will be angry about it. Ministers have prepared to shelve plans to legally force pubs and restaurants to let staff keep all their tips that they receive. Their concern, the government, is that the problems with the growth and of the pressure on businesses. To me, it's a minefield because I get so angry if I can't give the tip to the staff member. I was in the catering business many, many years ago when you were all children, and it was, we lived off our tips. I've been told that a lot of restaurants say to waiters and waitresses, if anybody asks you, do you get your tips, you tell them yes, whether it's true or not. To me, it makes me very, very angry. I go to a car wash and I've tipped the car wash guy. I found out the other day they don't get that tip. That goes into the coffers. Now, everyone's struggling, and don't forget, people who get tips also get taxed on their tips. So, the government are getting somebody, oh yes, hairdressers get taxed on their tips, and they will assess how much money you've been given. So if you do not declare your tips, you can get into a lot of trouble. So we've always been taxed on tips.
Oh.
There's a lot of dishonesty about this.
Oh, terrible.
And the thing that makes me angry is when you go to a restaurant and they put the service charge on, essentially put your tip onto the bill automatically, and they take the choice out of your hands. It should be down to you to decide whether you want to give a tip or not.
Interesting you say that. A lot of restaurants have started also putting a £1 donation to a charity on. Yeah. And if you don't check, and you feel guilty if you take it off. I do my work for charity, and I get a little bit irritated. I also will not put a tip. I will not put a tip on a credit card. Never once will I do that. I'll give cash to the staff.
No, I mean, that's what we were talking about earlier, because so few people actually carry cash nowadays.
That's right.
So you do end up putting tips on your card because you want to appear generous and you want to say thank you to the person.
But are you telling me if you gave a tip in cash to a waiter or whatever, they would, at the moment, they'd be required to give it over to the boss?
They'll put it in the tip jar.
They'll put it in the tip jar. When I was in the catering industry, what you did in big hotels and on the ships, you had a pot and there was points. So the chef might get 6 points. The waiter would get 4 points. The pot washer, I remember being on one of the ships and the pot washer wasn't getting his tips, and he was throwing everything through the porthole. And apparently there's £1 million between here and New York from people who were upset. And if they throw them through the porthole, the waiters don't get to serve because they've got no place to put them on. It's a minefield, this. Yeah. But everybody should have their tips. Everybody should have their tips.
If it needs to be legislated,
otherwise it's meaningless.
Do it. Yeah. Why pay tips if they're not going to get them? Joanna, in the Times, which college has now been forced to drop online-only courses?
So this is King's College in London. It's one of the best universities in the country, and it's another legacy or kind of hangover from lockdown, if you like. All university courses went online. Students sat in their bedrooms, staring into a laptop hours each day. But now, we're beyond that. We've got the vaccine. We've got COVID under control, and yet still, so many of our public services have not got back to normal. No. And universities are chief amongst this, still offering students, lots of them, I have to say, not all, but lots of them offering online lectures.
But that's a disgrace.
It is a disgrace because the other
because they're still charging.
Exactly. And at £9,250, the other thing the article is pointing out is that we've got the most expensive undergraduate education in the world. And it also had the highest number of complaints last year. And I'm sure this must be one of the things students are complaining about. If you pay all that money, and some of these lectures are not even new, they're kind of rewinds of lectures that were recorded last year, the year before. And students, understandably, I think, well, why are we being expected to pay all this money to sit in our bedroom watching something on our laptop?
Plus, you don't engage the same, do you? If you just watch, you're not going to engage.
You've got to get people back out. Students spend a great deal of money in small shops, in restaurants, in takeaways, etc., etc. We've got to get people back, and the government should make everybody go back to work. Everybody that works for them go back to work, because they're keeping the lifeblood of cities, towns. They must get out. We've got to get back to normal. Sadly, there's a lot of people in a terrible state that will not. I mean, I'm amazed how many people still wear masks. Amazed.
I do sometimes, though, still. Tell us about Jo Brand.
There's nothing to tell. I've just got to read this piece which sums it up, which I absolutely love. Jo Brand says she's glad she's not slim and attractive because it means slimy and perverted men are not interested in her. The comedian said that men say awful things to women when they are unattractive. They say even unpleasant things to people who are attractive. She revealed that when she lost 3.5 stone, a few months, a teenage male friend started eyeing her up, so she put the weight back on. I wanted to tell you all out that because it made me laugh. I mean, people like unattractive people. Not saying she's unattractive.
She's not unattractive. She's
not at all. She's got a wicked sense of humour. You fall in love with her. But I just thought that was the most hysterical story, that she was that honest about her. And if I was a straight man, I'd find her attractive. Jo, I like you, Jo.
Yeah, we love you, Jo.
I know, but when she lost 3.5 stone or whatever, I can't imagine it was a teenager eyeing her up somehow. Can you imagine?
Let her live with that illusion.
Yeah. What do you think, Jo? What do you think?
Joanna, what about this lady who was pregnant and she was given decaf because she was pregnant?
So Pete was very annoyed about the tip story. This is the one that's made me very, very angry today. They're talking about all the rules that women are expected to live under and all the unsolicited and unhelpful advice that you're given when you're pregnant. And this is a story that's prompted by an Olympic athlete, so somebody who really knows what they're doing. She's an Olympic climber, Shauna Coxey, and she was photographed going on a climbing wall when she was pregnant. And she'd just got a barrage of people saying you shouldn't do that when you're pregnant. This is dangerous, this is irresponsible. And she knows what she's doing. This is really unhelpful to bombard pregnant women with this advice. And they're just saying all the different things you're told about what you can eat, what you can't eat, you know, what you should wear, not to dye your hair. And she's saying it's kind of becomes really stressful for pregnant women. And then they tell you stress is bad for you whilst you're pregnant as well. But what makes it stressful is getting all of this advice. So the whole decaf thing is about a pregnant woman asking for a coffee in a bar or something, and actually just being given a decaf coffee. She hadn't asked for decaf, being given that because she was pregnant.
That's so patronising.
That's interesting. I went out as a pregnant person once for a radio idea, and I went out with a pram with like 9 months pregnant clipped onto me, and I was treated like I was horrified the way I was treated as a pregnant woman. I mean, I wasn't a pregnant woman, but I was making the point. I was making the point that pregnant women were having a bad time with prams.
Yes. You were just...
So it was a clip-on...
I can't even imagine it, can you?
No.
It was great fun.
Stubble will have put them off, Pete.
I did have a shave. I didn't go out with a...
Right, on that weird note, we're going to leave it for now. We'll see you both a little bit later on.
I did, honestly.
Always lively. Thank you.
It's time now, thankfully, for On Your Doorstep.
Oh, we love getting out and about on GB News, and this morning we are in Monmouth. Our reporter Bradley Harris is there. Hello, Bradley.
Hello, good morning all. Yeah, this is an exciting day to be in Monmouth because, of course, it's the local elections at the moment. They took place yesterday. 90 polling stations were open across Monmouthshire for people to come out and cast their vote. At the moment, though, here in Monmouthshire, the count doesn't start till 9 o'clock this morning, so we won't get results until about midday onwards today. So I've come onto people's doorsteps to find out how they have been voting, how they're feeling. Graham Thomas, Good morning. We caught up only a few days ago. We were chatting because, of course, the Conservatives took majority control of Monmouthshire 5 years ago. Correct. So we're finding out if people are still voting in the same ways they did in 2017. Do you mind if we have a quick chat on your bench? Because it's a beautiful day here in Monmouth, and you've got a lovely bench here, Graham. And I just want to come and chat to you because you've also very kindly left me a coffee this morning. Just want to ask you, you went out and voted yesterday. What was the turnout like? Was it busy?
Well, I went out at 11:30 a.m. yesterday morning, and there was one in vote and one out, and there was a real queue of people going back to Agincourt Square, about 20 people waiting in order to go in and vote.
See, that's really interesting. I was chatting to a woman called Kate earlier who said it was really quiet at about 5 o'clock in the evening. People must be going out in the morning then. Right. Can I ask you, though, 5 years the Tories have taken majority control of Monmouthshire. Is it 5 years well spent, do you think?
I think that we've seen services going down, and we need new faces to bring it back up to where it was, which was quite an efficient county, but it seems to really lost its direction under the Tories.
And what do you think the challenges are for Monmouthshire? What do you want to see improve? Because we're not getting the results till about midday today. So what are the issues that matter to you?
Well, they're talking about closing the local ambulance station, and public transport in Monmouth town is awful. They need to up the bus services because, of course, we lost the train services years ago. I know they're not going to bring those back, but we need good links for people who haven't got cars. Public transport links.
I was chatting again to Kate, the coffee shop owner, who says she wants consistency. That's why she voted for the Conservatives again. But what's interesting about you, Graham, is that you voted Tory in 2017 and you've changed your mind now.
I've now voted. There were 4 candidates in this election. There was the Tory, there was Labour, there was Green, and there was an independent candidate, who was David Cummings, who I voted for, because he ran our Chamber of Trade for a number of years, and he was really good, and you saw the influence he made on the town of Monmouth. So in the political sphere, I think he's going to be a good guy to be in place.
And are you surprised by the turnout that you saw yesterday? Because there was a lot of speculation that not many people were going to come out and vote. It was going to be quite quiet. But actually, you saw queues. It was really busy.
And also, to counter that good turnout, I found out there was a 20% postal vote. And of course, this is an effect of COVID. So already it was only 80% of the people. But when I was walking back from town yesterday afternoon, there were lots of people going to voting, and the Drybridge House car park was absolutely full, which is, you never see it in the evening. So this is a good, as you say, people come home from work because the voting stations are open till 10 p.m. 7 a.m. to 10 p.m, so it's quite a long period.
Yeah, and we'll get more confirmation on postal votes as the results come in as well. But you've been a resident in Monmouth for many, many years. Is this an interesting time politically for the county of Monmouthshire?
Yes, I've been living in Monmouth now for just over 20 years, and I think it's really a melting pot. And it's traditionally between the Tories, excuse me.
It's early.
It's early. Traditionally, it's between the Tories and Labour, but now the good news is that we've got Green candidates and independent candidates, and I think this is what's needed to give a fresh look at how things are going, because Monmouth is a big county but a very low population. And there's obviously problems with that in the communications, and as I mentioned earlier, Brad, public transport is critical.
Well, Graham, really interesting to hear your thoughts. And like I say, the count will begin from 9 o'clock this morning here in Monmouth, and we'll get the results at midday. So, Graham, I think we'll just sit back, have our coffee, and wait for the results to come in.
Thank you, Brad.
Sounds like a plan. Bradley, thank you.
Thank you, yeah. Now, as you know, I know nothing about football, but I gather it's great news for Glaswegians, yes, because yesterday Rangers secured their place in the Europa League final after a fantastic win, apparently, over the German side RB Leipzig.
Yes, good Rangers continue their dream run in the final and qualify for the Champions League. Well, let's talk to our Scotland reporter, Davy Donaldson, who can tell us all about it. Morning, Davy.
Yeah, good morning, Eamon. Yeah, absolutely fantastic news for Rangers Football Club. A lot of people may be surprised that they got this far in the competition, but what a performance last night. 2-0 up, looked like they were cruising. Leipzig come back, make it 2-1. And a lot of people started to get pretty nervous, but eventually Rangers running out 3-1 winners on the night. You can even hear to the right of me there people cheering away still from last night. I'm sure there'll be a lot of sore heads in Glasgow this morning, certainly in this area here in Govan where the Ibrox Stadium is. But yeah, absolutely fantastic for Rangers. It's only the 10th time a Scottish club has ever reached a European final. Rangers have reached their 6th European final, which is quite an incredible achievement in itself, and the first one since 2008 when they played Zenit St Petersburg, lost that final in Manchester back in 2008. So you can imagine what it means, not just to the people that support Glasgow Rangers Football Club, but to the country as a whole. It's a huge major achievement. Rangers will play Eintracht Frankfurt, who knocked out West Ham United last night. It would have been nice to have a Rangers-West Ham final, but sadly not to be. So that final took place on the 18th of May in Seville. And you can imagine the clamour for tickets already. I looked last night in some of the sites and some of the prices that have been quoted for flights, just not even from Scotland, but from the north of England and further south. You're probably talking about £800 return minimum. But let's just put it into perspective as well. When Rangers went to Manchester for that UEFA Cup final against Zenit St Petersburg, they took 250,000 fans with them, which is quite incredible. When Celtic went to Seville, they had over 150,000, regardless whether they were going to get tickets or not. So it just shows you how much people really want to go and want to go to that final. And people will get there one way or another. They will get there. And just a word as well, last night, speaking to some of the players, Jimmy Bell, the kitman, the Rangers kitman, he passed away this week. So a lot of players saying they wanted to reach the final for him. And obviously last year, the sad passing of the manager, Walter Smith, the legendary Rangers manager, the players, that was certainly keen in their eyes to try and reach the final for the Walter Smith, which, as I say, sadly passed away last year. But a really momentous occasion for Rangers. They can now look forward to that final in Seville on the 18th of May.
It's lovely to have something to look forward to like that. And it's nice to have good news, isn't it, for a change?
It is.
Davey, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, great. Lots of people talking about...
Eamon.
Yeah, yes, I think he called you Eamon.
Call me Eamon.
Yeah, that's because he can't see us.
I mean, I
Even though we
suppose
can
I
see
should
him.
take it as a compliment.
Well, I think so. How could you say otherwise?
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking I have Eamon's paycheck to go with it.
Tee-hee.
Go on, local elections.
Lots of people. Actually, we were talking as well. You were talking earlier about the Oxford. Well, it's not a scholarship. They're going. Oxford University is going to allow 20 Ukrainian students to come free of charge, basically, plus a grant to live on. And a lot of it's getting people quite upset about that. Les says, my daughter was awarded a place at Oxford to study for a PhD, but she had to decline because we couldn't afford it. I think a lot of people feel that it is very, very expensive going to university in this country. And is it our place to give free places to Ukrainian students? Doesn't charity begin at home?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I'm totally for it. If you've got these very bright Ukrainian students who've had their futures ripped away from them, then yes, do this. Absolutely, 100%. So long as we're doing it for the sum of our own as well. I think that's just the point.
It takes you back to the idea was that in the olden days, you went to university on a full grant, but you had to earn your place to get there, didn't you?
Yeah.
Not many people, not everybody went to university.
No.
It's like everybody now feels that they have to.
I got a grant.
Yeah.
I got a grant to go, and there was no you didn't have fees to pay or anything, so it didn't actually. I don't know, it just seems a ridiculous situation. My niece and nephew are both...
It was Tony
at
Blair's
uni
big
at the minute.
idea, wasn't it, that everybody should go to university? I'm not sure it's worked, has it? Very expensive.
I don't think so, no. I think apprenticeships are a very good way forward for a lot of people.
That's what I did. I did an apprenticeship.
Anyway, if you need a wall building, Anne's your man.
Yeah, not that sort of apprenticeship.
Oh, sorry.
Although it would be useful.
It would be very useful.
We should all learn a trade. That's what I think.
Trade, yeah, it's a good idea. Look, we're out of time, but we're back with all the headlines in a couple of minutes. First, here's your weather.
Good morning, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's a fine start in the south, but cloudier in the north with outbreaks of rain for central and southern Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. Brighter skies will follow as the rain clears during the afternoon. The rain is sinking slowly southwards across the country on the top of an area of high pressure. That means that increasing the rain will fragment as it moves south, but it's certainly got some heavy bursts within it at the moment for Northern Ireland, for the Central Belt into southern Scotland, and then it reaches parts of northern England and North Wales by lunchtime. So damp afternoon to come for central zones, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland, the skies do brighten following that rain, albeit with 1 or 2 showers and a fresher feel in the far north and northwest. But it's warm ahead of the rain, increasingly cloudy, I think, but could still achieve 22, 23 Celsius for the likes of London, mid to high teens elsewhere generally across much of the country. Into the evening, the rain does move south, but by this time it's just a weak feature, and so it's on and off light rain for most. And then it clears by dawn on Saturday. So for much of the country, it's a dry start to the weekend, clear spells, perhaps a chill in the air for Northern Ireland, for Scotland, for Northern England as well, particularly in any sheltered spots. And then Saturday itself looks, for the vast majority, dry and bright. A few exceptions, some mistiness lurking around the coast of West Wales and the southwest perhaps, as well as the east of England. And cloud building in places, particularly central and southern Scotland, northern and eastern England. A few showers where that happens. But for the vast majority, it's looking dry, it's looking bright, and where we get enough sunshine, temperatures into the low 20s, particularly in the south, I think mid to high teens further north. Sunday's looking very similar, plenty of sunny spells, some outbreaks of rain in the far northwest of Scotland, otherwise dry for many, and similar on Monday.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning to you. It is 8 o'clock on Friday, May the 6th. It is results day of local elections, and this is breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Dan.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio, and online as well. So whatever you're doing today, you can take us with you, so you don't have to miss a thing.
Coming up for you this morning, we're going to have the latest results from the local elections. Has it been as bad for the Tories as some predicted? Have the Labour Party done as well as they were hoping? We've got reporters standing by right across the country, and our political correspondent Tom Harwood will be with us in the studio with his analysis.
GB News royal reporter Cameron Walker will be here, bringing us right up to date on all things royal.
And if that wasn't enough to keep you going this morning, we've got a double treat of Paul Coit and Stephanie Tecci, who are going to take us through all the major sport and entertainment news that you need to know before heading out for the weekend.
We are the People's Channel, so your views drive what we do, so do make sure you get your views into us today. Email us gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us @gbnews.
Well, results are being declared from English councils following yesterday's local elections. More than half have now been counting overnight, with the rest getting underway a little bit later on this morning.
Yeah, the Conservatives have so far lost control of 6 councils, with Labour taking control of 3. The Lib Dems have also made some gains, taking Kingston upon Hull from Labour.
Now, 3 symbolic London councils have been lost by the Conservatives: Westminster, Barnet and Wandsworth. Westminster had been controlled by the Tories since 1964, Wandsworth since 78, and they're now in the hands of Labour.
This is a real turning point for the Labour Party. We've made real headway in key battlegrounds in England, and I'm confident that when the results start coming in from Wales and Scotland, we'll be able to show progress across the whole of the UK in exactly the sorts of seats that we need to take off the Tories in order to win the next general election.
Well, counts in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland begin this morning, with all 32 Scottish councils and 22 Welsh local authorities being contested.
In Northern Ireland, Sinn Féin and the DUP battling to be the largest party in the Assembly. No seats declared as yet on that.
Well, we are indeed joined now by our political correspondent, Tom Harwood. What's your reading of how things are going at the moment?
Well, this has not been a pretty night for the Conservatives. Very clearly, there have been some totemic losses, particularly within London, as you were mentioning, Wandsworth, Westminster and indeed Barnet. These were 3 councils that the Conservatives had hoped to at least keep one of last night, but clearly have not been able to do so. So Labour having a very good night in the capital. However, when we look a little bit beyond London and we look to places, for example, up in the north, Hartlepool, where the Conservatives have gained, if we look across to situations like Thurrock, where the Conservatives have also picked up seats. Outside the sort of metropolitan centre, the Conservatives are making small gains. So there's a bit of a mixed picture over the course of the night. However, the big qualifier is that these seats were last elected in 2018. So that's actually, if we're looking at places like Hartlepool that the Conservatives gained later on, you'd expect them to pick up some seats. So really, it's a very mixed and quite messy picture outside of London. Clearly, the Labour Party doing well. The big question, though, is are the Labour Party doing well enough to win a general election? Because they don't just have to overturn what went on in 2019, but of course the Labour Party lost in 2017 as well. It lost in 2015 and it lost in 2010. There's a huge mountain for the Labour Party to climb if they want to win the next election. And are the gains they're making enough is the question in order to do that.
In terms of the other parties, though, it's interesting, isn't it, that we've seen, it's got to be said, a very good night for the Lib Dems. Pretty impressive night for the Greens as well.
Certainly, if we're looking at some of these smaller parties, they do tend to do better outside of the normal parliamentary cycle of general elections. The Lib Dems are traditionally incredibly good at digging in local communities, in by-elections and in local council elections. And clearly, there have been many people who want to give the Conservative Party, the government, a bit of a thumping yesterday. And whether that's on issues of Partygate, whether that's on issues of the global financial situation, the issues of inflation that we're experiencing right now, clearly people felt that other parties were the way to go in many areas, in the southwest in particular.
Yeah,
Lib Dems
people
doing
vote
well.
differently in local elections, don't they? It's sort of almost as though that's where you do a protest vote.
It's certainly safer to vote. You're not going to change the government by the way that you vote in a local election. You might very well send the government a message in the same way that you would do in a by-election. And actually the Lib Dems' messaging in some of these by-elections, where they've been very successful in Conservative areas in what they're calling the blue wall, as opposed to the red wall up in the Midlands and the North, the blue wall down in the south and the sort of leafy suburbs and home counties. The Lib Dems often on their literature during by-elections would say, you're not going to change the government, but you will send them a message. And that potentially is what people have been thinking now as well, as the Lib Dems do pick up in those areas.
What's going to be interesting in all of this is, and I don't know how we get any analysis of it all, I have no idea, but as to whether people are going to start to see Boris Johnson as a vote loser for them or a vote winner. Because, again, people, we know from everything that you get in touch with us and tell us about, he's still a very divisive character. People either seem to love him or hate him now.
Certainly, and what really matters is how Conservative MPs view their party leader. One of the slight peculiarities of this set of elections is that in many Conservative seats, there actually weren't local elections last night. They tended to be in more Labour areas, the local authorities that were up for election. So potentially it doesn't actually affect as many MPs as we might think in Westminster, with those who have lost councillors or have seats in areas that are affected by last night. So really, if we need to look at this situation in the round, has Boris Johnson done worse than someone like David Cameron did, who of course went backwards in those local elections as well and then went on to win a general election? Will the Conservative government, will the Conservative Party and its leadership be able to make the case that this is a relatively ordinary set of local elections, that this was nothing special for the Labour Party? That's the propaganda battle that we're really going to be witnessing over the next hours and days.
Yeah, because certainly the backbenchers, some of the Tory MPs who were talking about overthrowing Boris, were always saying, we'll wait until after the May elections. We'll see how we do in the May elections. I wonder how they feel they have done, whether they still feel that maybe Boris should go, or that for the moment he hasn't done too badly, we'll stick with him.
Well, it's so hard to know, because, of course, if you look at somewhere like Wandsworth, that council that was so famously Conservative, that was Margaret Thatcher's favourite council, well, the seat associated in that area, Battersea, went to the Labour Party at the last election. So, to some extent, losing Wandsworth was a continuation of that trend. The council was Tory, but the seat in Parliament was Labour. And to some extent, looking at those areas where the Labour Party is doing a lot better, yes, OK, some of them are Conservative seats. Westminster is, Barnet is as well. But it is very much in London. And there has been that narrative for the last few years that the Conservatives are doing better in the North and in the Midlands and worse in London. And if that is able to sort of sustain as a narrative, that Boris Johnson, of course, he wouldn't necessarily win London. Now, that's ironic, given that he was Mayor of London and won London twice before all of that situation of politics in this country changed with Brexit and everything else. But if he can still seem to be sort of stemming the losses in the North and the Midlands, maybe he doesn't look like so much of a loser. He's definitely not a winner tonight, but the question is, how much of a loser is he? And that's what Conservative MPs will be considering.
OK. Tom, thank you very much.
Fascinating.
It is interesting to get that. It's the analysis that makes it really interesting. But what is actually happening on the ground? Let's head up to Dudley, should we? Our national reporter, Paul Hawkins, is there for us. Morning to you, Paul.
Yeah, morning, Stephen. Morning, Anne.
How is Dudley doing?
Dudley, it has to be said, unlike London, this is a Conservative hold. So the Conservatives have held on here. In fact, the Conservatives picked up that they made a net gain of 1 seat. Labour made a net gain of 3 seats. So for the Conservatives, they've held on in Dudley. Last year, this council swung heavily towards the Conservatives. Labour lost 11 seats. So for Labour, they would argue that, OK, they haven't recovered all the 11 seats that they lost last year, but they have made some gains. The Labour leader on the council, Kedar Zadar, has called it a successful night. He said the unhappiness with Westminster has translated to the ballot box, and it's put them in a strong position for the next 2 years. For the Conservatives, their leader, Patrick Hartley, has said that they've done well. They were getting bashed in the media. They've been in office, though, for a long time, so Labour should be winning more seats. So both parties on the council here claiming success, but it has to be said, Labour, OK, alluding to what Tom was saying, have Labour done enough? Labour are moving in the right direction. One would say the jury is still out about whether they've done enough, because here in Dudley it is viewed as a bellwether seat. It's a bellwether part of the country. Famously, Dudley North is, when we look at the general election, Dudley North is one of the seats in the red wall that switched to the Conservatives, swung heavily towards the Conservatives in 2019. So if Labour are to reclaim that at the next general election, they need to be moving in the right direction, even at a local level in these sorts of elections. And one would say that, OK, they made some gains last night, but there's still some work to do if they're going to break through within the next, in 2 years' time.
OK, Paul, thank you.
Looks like a sunny day in Dudley.
It does. It looks lovely, doesn't it? I tell you what's depressing, though, and I find it depressing, the number of people who didn't vote.
There's a very low turnout, generally.
Linda says, I live in a village in South Wales. For the first time in my life, I didn't vote. No good choice.
Well, I think that's it, don't you think? A lot of people are very undecided. Not terribly impressed with anyone, you know.
Interesting. Richard says, I live in Galston in Great Yarmouth. I didn't vote in the local elections. Reason being, no one canvassed me. If the parties can't be bothered, why should I?
You see, I think a lot of people are fed up with politicians generally. Do you remember earlier I was saying that I visited my old house at the weekend? In fact, the family did a little tour of all the houses we'd lived in. And a lot of people have done the same thing. Marlene says, I've visited where I was born a few times. I was born in Bonington Square in Vauxhall in London. We had no hot water or bathroom. I was born there in 1948. My infant school was St Mark's, next to the Oval Cricket Ground, which is still a school today.
Oh.
Life goes on, doesn't it?
Christine says, I've often been to homes we previously lived with. I think it's an age thing, but it's a lovely feeling, lots of memories. I've never gone back inside one, though, and don't want to. Don't want to spoil the memories.
Oh, I don't know. I want to have a peek in.
Do you?
Yeah.
I can understand that, though, the idea of thinking, because it's going to look totally
It will look different, yeah. And yes, that might hurt. Neil says, a couple of years ago, I went back with my mother to our old childhood homes. We knocked on the door of my first home, the house in which I was born. They invited us in and showed us around. The house even had its original house door from where it was built in the 1950s. We also went back to my old schools and church where I sang in the choir. It is lovely revisiting those places.
I like the idea that you can go back and it's still that door, still the door you used to open, still there.
I've got a lovely photograph of my parents when they were courting just after the war, and it's in a place called Priory Park in Malvern. And we went there and we did our photographs with exactly the same position. That's really nice.
That's
revisiting lovely places.
Yeah,
beautiful,
I like that.
Beautiful place, Malvern.
Never been.
Actually, you forget, don't you, how... Because when you grow up in an area, you take it for granted.
Yeah, you do.
And the Malvern Hills are absolutely legendary and wonderful. And just driving up there, the first glimpse of the Malvern Hills suddenly brought it all back. And it just absolutely the most stunningly beautiful place. But we never really thought so when we were there.
No, I'm like that with the Lake District. I never appreciated it and being dragged out for walks when I was a teenager and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now, you just drive
wonderful.
back up and it's just the most beautiful place. Oh, dear. Youth is wasted on the young.
Oh, it is. Oh, it really is. Like education. It's wasted on the young too.
It is 8:14. Let's bring you up to date with the headlines this morning. And a senior Ukrainian official says a new attempt is underway to try to get civilians trapped in the Azovstal steelworks in Mariupol. Earlier, the Ministry of Defence confirmed that Russian forces have continued their ground assault for a second day. President Zelensky says the plant is being shelled.
Currently, Russian shelling and the assault on Azovstal do not stop, but civilians still need to be taken out. Women, children. Many children remained there. Just imagine this hell. There are children there. More than 2 months of constant shelling, bombing, constant death nearby.
Oxford University is offering a fully funded graduate scholarship scheme for Ukrainian refugees. Application and course fees will be waived for 20 students who will also receive £7,500, yes, exactly, to support living and study costs.
Taking a break from social media can improve your mental health if you stay off it for a week. That's according to Bath University. The study found those who stopped using platforms like TikTok, Instagram and Facebook had reduced levels of depression and anxiety. Did you notice I said TikTok with derision in my voice?
TikTok, yes. know what you mean.
Don't like it.
Well, here we go. The average house price has increased by more than £3,000 last month. Halifax reports property values went up for the 10th consecutive month, the longest run of continuous gains in 5 years.
The man accused of attacking comedian Dave Chappelle on stage at the Hollywood Bowl has been charged. 23-year-old Isaiah Lee faces 4 counts, including battery and possession of a weapon with intent to assault.
Doesn't surprise me at all that giving up Facebook, Instagram or TikTok, it actually does you good, because I think people get far too uptight and stressed out by social media.
Oh, yeah, I get stressed out when you see these, when you come across these people doing stuff. It comes up on YouTube sometimes. And there's this one guy in America who's English in America, and he's just this great big camp fella, and he's just doing all this crazy stuff about what it's like being a Brit in America. It's the most irritating thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, so you're getting stressed out by it.
I'm getting stressed out by it. It's just like every time I see him on there, I'm just like, go away.
It's interesting, though, that study would suggest then that maybe if you go to your GP and saying, I'm feeling stressed and anxious, they'll actually turn around to you and say, well, stop smoking, cut down on the eating, and give up the alcohol and give up the social media.
Get a prescription to come off social media.
Yeah. Do you
3
good.
times a day for a fortnight.
But don't give up watching the telly, because we appreciate your company.
Quite right, too, or listening to the radio.
Now, voters in Northern Ireland were casting their votes in the elections for the National Assembly yesterday. Verification of the votes is now underway, with results expected this afternoon sometime. Some polling in the run-up to the election suggested that nationalist Sinn Féin could become the largest party in Stormont for the first time ever.
Be interesting if that happens. Let's talk to our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie. So what's the latest, Doogie? What are we actually expecting now?
Well, the boxes behind me have just been opened in the Titanic Exhibition Centre here in Belfast. There's 239 candidates slugging it out for 90 seats across 18 constituencies in an assembly that may not sit because of problems over the protocol with unionism. They're well rehearsed. We've spoke about them on many occasions. But we're looking for various things here. The rise of the Alliance Party, that middle ground, and possibly taking that ground off the Ulster Unionist Party. We're looking at the TUV, the traditional unionist voice, that has gone on the harder line, I suppose, than the DUP on the protocol. We're looking at how they are polling, and they will probably off the DUP. Also Sinn Féin. But we can tell you the vote here, like all of the UK, is down. Normally, Northern Ireland would turn out about 70%. It's struggling to hit 60%, first exit polls are telling us. And some of the political parties that I've managed to have a quiet word with this morning are pretty nervous. Now, we looked in the constituency reports, if you remember earlier on, at places like Strangford, very middle of the road, unionist, DUP holding 3 seats there before, the TUV now in there. It's reported, and these are just exit polls, that the TUV has maybe took as much as 20% of that vote. Between the DUP and the Alliance Party, they reckon they're neck and neck in the 30s. So that is showing exactly what's happening here in Northern Ireland. It's almost back to the 2003 elections, when the Ulster Unionist Party and the SDLP, the more liberal parties, if you like, of nationalism and unionism, were overthrown by Sinn Féin and the DUP. The DUP have now almost stole the UUP's clothes in some ways, and the TUV theirs. So it'll be all about those transfer votes and where they go, and who is the last man standing, and that will be crucial in what forms the next government inside Northern Ireland.
OK, Doogie, thank you. Back to you throughout the course of the day, of course, as those results start to come in.
And after the break, we'll be taking a look at all the sport and showbiz news with broadcaster Paul Coit and reporter Stephanie Tecci. First of all, though, the weather.
Good morning, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's a fine start in the south, but cloudier in the north with outbreaks of rain for central and southern Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. Brighter skies will follow as the rain clears during the afternoon. The rain is sinking slowly southwards across the country on the top of an area of high pressure. That means that increasingly the rain will fragment as it moves south, but it's certainly got some heavy bursts within it at the moment for Northern Ireland, for the Central Belt into southern Scotland, and then it reaches parts of northern England and North Wales by lunchtime. So damp afternoon to come for central zones, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland, the skies do brighten following that rain, albeit with 1 or 2 showers and a fresher feel in the far north and northwest. But it's warm ahead of the rain, increasingly cloudy, I think, but could still achieve 22, 23 Celsius for the likes of London. Mid to high teens elsewhere generally across much of the country. Into the evening, the rain does move south, but by this time it's just a weak feature, and so it's on and off light rain for most. And then it clears by dawn on Saturday. So for much of the country, it's a dry start to the weekend, clear spells, perhaps a chill in the air for Northern Ireland, for Scotland, for Northern England as well, particularly in any sheltered spots. And then Saturday itself looks, for the vast majority, dry and bright. A few exceptions, some mistiness lurking around the coast of West Wales and the southwest, perhaps, as well as the east of England. And cloud building in places, particularly central and southern Scotland, northern and eastern England. A few showers where that happens. But for the vast majority, it's looking dry, it's looking bright, and where we get enough sunshine, temperatures into the low 20s, particularly in the south, I think mid to high teens further north. Sunday's looking very similar, plenty of sunny spells, some outbreaks of rain in the far northwest of Scotland, otherwise dry for many, and similar on Monday.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
.25, morning to you. I'm leaning back. I'm ready, excited for this bit.
Why?
Well, because it is time for the sport and the showbiz.
Yes.
So
you lean back and just let
lean back.
Let them talk to each other.
Get on with it.
Paul Coit and Stephanie Tatch are here. It's lovely to nice to be sandwiched in between.
Well, it's nice to see you. Are you looking at me for the first thing? Are you looking to me for a little sports news by any chance?
I'm thinking of Rangers.
Why don't you swap and do each other's?
That would be great.
That would be very
That would be great.
I wouldn't last 10 seconds doing sport.
Oh, really?
No.
Oh, I don't believe
about
that
Man
for a
United.
second. Oh, OK, well, it's
But
not
it
about
isn't
Manchester.
today, is it?
It's not about Manchester United.
No,
I mean, really, it's all about Rangers. Rangers have been fantastic. Rangers who probably weren't expected to do quite as well in the Europa. I'm probably going to get pelters for saying this, but it's probably weren't expected to do quite as well as they did, but they have been magnificent in the Europa League. My thoughts are certainly with Celtic fans who are probably waking up this morning thinking, how are we going to go to work? How are we going to face the afternoon with all our Rangers friends? But Rangers were just fantastic. They played Leipzig. Now, Leipzig were probably, I would say, the favourites to win the Europa League going right back. It's like 18 games they have to get through. So they played Leipzig in the away leg, and they lost there, but then brought them back to Ibrox. The crowd was incredible, the team was incredible, and they're through to the final. So everything worked great. But whereas West Ham, you know, there was a good chance it was going to be a West Ham Rangers final. Well, should Rangers have got through, which they did, but they went to Germany to Eintracht Frankfurt and came away with nothing, unfortunately. So it didn't go very well for them.
Well, that's a bit of a shocker, isn't it? Because Frankfurt, they've been pretty bad in the Bundesliga, haven't they?
At home they have, yeah, absolutely. It's a very good point. So the thing is, they really have been bad at home, but the atmosphere. Well, you're giving Stephen a strange look. He knows his Bundesliga. You can tell he knows his Bundesliga. Yeah.
Bundesliga.
Yeah.
Eintracht Frankfurt.
He knows his Leipzig for his Frankfurts. Don't you worry about that. So they have been bad at home, but the atmosphere was unbelievable, and they've been particularly good in the Europa League as well. So unfortunately, West Ham went down to 10 men very early on, and if you're down to 10 men in a game like that, then you're going to be in trouble. And also, David Moyes, the manager, David Moyes actually got sent off as well, which is not good. A little fit of pique, actually, because what had happened is that he was very upset about the sending off earlier on, which I don't think anybody would have any disagreement about. And then the ball went out the ball boy, and then he's literally kicked the ball towards the ball boy. Then there a little skirmish. The referees come over, brandish the red card to David Moyes. So David Moyes, the manager, had to go down the top.
That's astonishing. Has that ever happened before?
There has been a few occasions. Yeah, that's it. The thing is, the manager's got to behave himself. Yeah. So, you know, they're not under. They're always under scrutiny as well.
They don't miss 3 matches, do they? Is it just the one match that they miss?
No. You know what? That's an extremely good point, because when it comes to a manager, I guess they would take the ban as well, but that would be in Europe. So, it looks like unless West Ham do something unbelievable over the next few games, they're not going to be in Europe next season. So David Moyes, very naughty. I don't know whether, as a manager, though, you actually know what to do, because when you're a player, if you get sent off, the red card comes out, you know what you've got to do. You turn around, you kick the grass, and then you storm off towards the tunnel. Whereas a manager, probably if they've never been sent off, and go, well, where do I go? What do I do?
But that's bad, because he can't actually do his job.
No.
Correct. Yeah, well, that's it. So it works for a manager just like it would for a player.
That's astonishing.
Interesting. We should have red cards in here.
I think I'd be out now, wouldn't I? I wouldn't even be in here.
No, we'd give each other red cards. We'd
be serving bans every week.
Just give each other a withering look instead.
No, we could have a break, That
would be quite nice, actually. Convenient.
Stephanie.
Oh.
Do you know what? I'm getting... Well, when it comes to Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, right, and the court case, and there's some serious accusations flying about.
Yeah.
It's interesting that she's taken to the stand now.
Yes, finally.
But there's this... If you look at social media, there is this wave of sympathy for Johnny Depp.
It is.
And is she still getting a lot of stick, isn't she?
She is. Just this week alone, there was up to 3 million signatures on a petition that's asking her not to star in her next film for Aquaman 2, because that's how much Johnny Depp's fans are just totally rallying against Amber. So she's taken to the stand. Yesterday was day 2 for her, and some of the stuff she's been coming out of, the attacks that she's accusing Johnny Depp of, has been quite graphic. It's been quite triggering, even for someone at home to listen to.
Horrible.
She's also been bringing out the crocodile tears. I hate to say this because I don't know if it's real, but you see her
Bad actress, then, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I'm like, where are the tears that's coming for what she's expressing? But yesterday she was saying, because during this case it hasn't looked good on her, she's been bringing out pictures, videos of Johnny, and she said the reason why she's been storing up all this evidence is because she wanted to play back to him how he is like when he's intoxicated, when he's
I can
drunk.
understand that.
Yeah, so in that sense, she says she understands addiction, and that's why she wanted to gather up all this evidence against him.
But she's fired her PR team.
Yeah.
She's got a PR team running her PR during the case.
Yeah, because she hasn't looked good in this case. I think, she thought she was going to come out winning, but we can actually see on both sides, both of them are just as toxic as one another. And it's, you've got two actors going against each other, and I'm like, is everyone just acting up at this precise moment?
I watch and I do not know who to believe. I really don't. But just to be... He is suing her for
libel. She wrote...
And she is countersuing.
Yeah, so she's countersuing for now £79.4 million, and he's going for £39.6 million over an article she wrote in 2019 for the Washington Post, where she said that she was a victim of domestic abuse, and he says...
But she didn't name it.
No, she didn't name him at all.
Johnny Depp.
So this is where this case, it will be quite interesting to see who wins, because, the accusation that he's accusing her from, it's not actually syncing up for what this case is and all the evidence that's being brought out.
I just can't understand, as you said, if they've got a PR... She had a PR team. Why somebody hasn't said to either or both of them, this is just horrible. Well, to play out these vicious attacks on each other in court.
See, I think he's come across in his evidence quite well. But she, as you said, Stephanie, it's the tears. I saw some of this evidence yesterday and just thought, I think you're putting that on. Now, that might be totally unfair. Might be totally unfair.
But the weird thing, I mean, this is a Hollywood actress.
Yeah.
So if you're going to see anybody with crocodile tears or anybody putting it on, then you're trying to think, is this a double bluff? Because then if it doesn't look real, then maybe it is real, because surely being a good actress she is, it's going to come... How long is it going to go on for?
Well, we've got...
And the money that the actual case is...
3 weeks of this case. Another 3 weeks. So sorry for the viewers at home if you're bored of it, but we're going to be hearing much more, and there's probably much more stories. But do you know what's been quite interesting is all the different Hollywood names that are getting involved with this case. So earlier this week, Paul McCartney had a show in Seattle, and he'd done a song with Johnny Depp, and he had a picture of him up on stage. So people were like, oh, that's a bit controversial, having Johnny Depp up. But they've been friends for over 20 years. Amber last night on her stage, she was saying that the reason why Johnny Depp had kind of been violent with her because he was accusing her of having an affair with James Franco, who's a fellow actor. So there's a lot of names that are being involved in this case. So it's going to turn quite ugly before we actually get a verdict.
It is. If it gets worse, you can't bear to think of it. It's awful.
It'll keep us talking, won't it?
Turning ugly. This is the nice stuff at the moment. This is where we're going through the nice stuff at the moment.
I know. Look, we're out of time. We're catching up with you. Are we catching up, Stephanie, a little bit later on?
I don't think so, but I will be here in the morning.
Oh, good.
Good. We can talk about Gordon Ramsay.
You'll have more from me, I'm afraid.
That's going to come.
We have Paul Robinson, former England goalkeeper, is going to join us as well.
Good. Excellent.
Look forward to that. OK, thank you both.
Thank you.
Do stay with us, because we've got plenty more to come, including a look through today's papers with Pete Price and Joanna Williams, that is.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The interaction.
It is 8:35. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Good morning to you. We're live across your TV, your radio, and
online.
Thank you. Yes. I need
Should we go through the papers?
Oh, should we?
Yeah, let's do it with broadcaster Pete Price and author and academic Joanna Williams, who've joined us again. Thank you very much. Joanna, kick us off with the cost of living.
Yeah, so this is the front page of the Daily Mail, and I mean, I have to warn people in advance, it's really depressing reading when you look at this. It's just detailing. We're facing recession, we've got inflation at a 10-year high, over 10%, sorry, a 40-year high, growth plunging, pay dropping, mortgage interest rates rising. Obviously, we've been talking for weeks now about fuel costs escalating. You know, I'm just thinking, where are the big ideas on how we solve this? We've just had the local elections. It looks like the Conservative Party have lost a little bit, you know, but they've not been the massive losses, and there's not been the huge swing towards Labour yet. I mean, you know, I know not all the results are in yet.
Can I ask about big ideas? Because when we were talking earlier on about inflation, that's very complicated, but you're saying you didn't think putting interest rates up to curb inflation would necessarily work because this is a global problem. Well, if that's the case, if it's a global problem, then does it matter what ideas we come up in this country?
Well, I think we could be looking a bit bigger than we are at the moment. I mean, we've had this patronising advice, haven't we, from one government minister in the week that we should all start buying value supermarket food. Like, oh, you know, we'd never have thought of that without him telling us. And we've had energy companies sending out pairs of socks to people in the post. It's all just a bit insulting. I mean, fracking, nuclear power stations, you know, we need to have some proper investment, actually look at how we boost productivity, how we actually grow the economy as well.
Isn't it interesting that in our country we've always been brought up to buy our property? We must own a property, where many countries in the world, they rent because they free up money. It's been ingrained in our brains.
But how does it free up? Because like rent, it costs more than a mortgage nowadays.
Now it does, but that was the mentality before, you know, that they can move on and move away. I mean, I'll never forget my first mortgage when you were all children, and it was the scariest thing ever. And I went, I can't do this for the next 25 years. I was terrified. So we were just as bad in those days, you know.
But my concern is that there's quite a lot of people actually secretly happy at the situation we're in now. I mean, you look, we've got this cost of living crisis, and yet you still have people sitting on motorways, stopping cars, protesting for net zero. You still have people going to fuel stations, stopping people getting their petrol. And it seems like you've got all these kind of net zero environmentalists kind of really quite pleased, essentially, that the economy is shutting, you know, is not being very productive, and they're not wanting economic growth. And this kind of environmental agenda, I think, actually supports this regression in our living standards.
They do live in a different world to us, though, you know, especially the tree huggers. They're up there now, sitting there with no telly, not even listening to us.
Oh.
How dare they miss GB News?
But that's fine if that's what you want. Yeah, but
don't throw your ideas on other people.
Exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
Well, Richard says Boris needs to realise his net zero policy is not a vote winner in red wall seats. And, I mean, you do wonder, there's a lot of opposition to net zero. I think net zero is a good aim. It's just is now the time.
In happier times.
It is. And to come back to what we were saying earlier about these things being global problems, you know, to what extent is us taking on net zero here in the UK going to stop China, for example, pumping out emissions over there? You know, what we produce in this country is an absolute drop in the ocean on the world scale.
That's a bit NIMBY, isn't it?
Well, it is, but the danger is we could seriously impoverish people here. You know, we've not seen anything yet, really. It's going to be the winter, I reckon, when this is properly going to hit home, when people are really struggling to heat their houses and afford to buy food. And yet, you know, we'll still be banging on about net zero.
And also, don't forget, when Trump gets back in, the coal emissions will go up again, so it'll be China and America again. I just thought I'd throw his name in.
Thank you, yeah. Something to look forward to.
Now, what connects Coke, Pepsi and Heineken?
Coke, Pepsi and Heineken make up to a quarter of branded litter that's found. Almost a quarter of the branded litter comes from just 3 firms, a study has suggested. 23% of branded names, and apparently the drinks industry was the largest polluter in 2020 and 2021. The story is that, but it opens the bigger picture of what on earth do we do with litter. I mean, I've just interviewed a lady who's just gone to Mongolia, and she's raising money for a charity over there of kids that live on the rubbish dumps, and they make their money out of collecting litter. I mean, if that's the way the world's coming to, but it is a monstrous problem with everything, with packaging of all sorts, you know.
I mean, thankfully things are improving a little bit in terms of, you know, being less wasteful. But for this sort of thing, why are people... I mean, really, chuck it in a bin. Chuck it in a bin.
Oh, don't start me on that. Walking through the street, seeing people throwing on the floor. I was brought up to put all my rubbish and take it home with me. That's what I was incensed the other way when I saw somebody throwing some rubbish away right by a bin. It seems cool to throw the rubbish away by the bin.
Pete, because I have to say, I have done in the past. I've gone up to people and I've said, excuse me, you've dropped something.
Yeah, but unfortunately, I would get my head kicked in.
And what did they say?
If I did it.
They were embarrassed and they picked it up.
My lot wouldn't have been.
People who were driving a car. I saw people driving a car in front of me, wound down the window and threw something up. And I said to them again, you know, look, you shouldn't do that. Pick it up.
You're very lucky, though. You're very lucky that didn't happen to you. It is absolutely horrendous. You try. I mean, I've been in the streets in the park to tell somebody to pick up after the dog. I've had the abuse beyond, and it worries me. And
I know
they're not abused. Carry knives. It's horrendous.
Yeah, you have got to be careful.
You have in this day and age. It's terrible. There's no respect anymore.
But if so much branded litter comes down to those 3 companies, shouldn't they be addressing it too?
That's an interesting point.
They have. Shouldn't they bear us a responsibility?
They've said we're looking at the plastic. We're taking less plastic. Green grip. We've got the removing of plastic in our packaging. They're trying their best, but it's
are they?
just.
I mean, they're mega £1,000,000 businesses, aren't they?
We're almost out of time. Only because Oliver Dowden's arrived. We're going to talk to him in a moment, the chairman of the Conservative Party. We're just getting him mic'd up. So can we just have a look? Famous names in the Express. Apparently, there are a lot of famous people who the under-30s don't know.
It's really interesting. Marilyn Monroe, Muhammad Ali, Marlon Brando, Nelson Mandela. Young people don't know who they are. It's interesting because the Beatles have reinvented themselves over and over again with their music, so young people know them. But isn't it incredible when you think Marilyn Monroe and Marlon Brando?
I mean, a few more people might have heard of Marilyn Monroe now that Kim Kardashian
because of the dress. Which has also caused mayhem because she's worn this dress.
You know, it's the anniversary today of, I think it's the conviction of the Moors murderers.
Gosh.
And some of the team here who's much younger than us had to Google who because they didn't know.
Well,
I mean, that's a good thing in a sense. I mean, you don't want to remember.
But it would be nice to maybe, GB, doing a programme about who are they and where are they now. Because you should keep these people. Nelson Mandela, how can you not know what he did? You know, and Muhammad Ali, another legend. And Pete Price isn't on the list. And who is he? Who cares?
Well, exactly. Look, we're out of time. Pete Price, Joanna Williams, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, results from yesterday's local elections have been coming in throughout this morning, of course.
Labour's won control of councils in Southampton, Wandsworth, Westminster, Barnet and the new Cumberland Council, winning control from the Conservatives. The Greens and the Lib Dems have also been making some gains as well.
Yeah, the Conservative Party have retained a number of councils, including Dudley, Rushmore and Brentford.
Well, let's talk to Chairman of the Conservative Party, Oliver Dowden. Good to see you, as always. Pleasure to talk to you. Look, this is a difficult one for you to gauge, isn't it? Because, you know, really, you've done pretty badly, but you were expecting that. Have you done as badly as you thought you might?
Well, I think the honest answer is there's a difficult set of results, particularly in London, and you've highlighted some of those. But equally, we've made gains elsewhere, whether that's Hartlepool, Nuneaton or Thurrock. And this is against the backdrop, as you say, of us being midterm, all those kind of headlines. I think when you take all of that, it doesn't demonstrate that Labour has the momentum to get into government.
Yes, you can argue as well. They didn't do as well as maybe they should, a good opposition party, midterm.
Yes, that would be precisely my argument. And actually, if you look at, say, what Tony Blair achieved, if you remember back in 2005, you were talking in your previous extract about things people don't remember. Maybe people don't remember the run-up to the 97 election anymore. But in 1995, Tony Blair gained 1,800 councils. Even Ed Miliband managed to get over 800 in 2011. And indeed, William Hague, very good friend of mine, he gained 1,300 in 2000. None of those people went on to win the elections. Labour are not going to do anything like that.
No, John Major lost 2018, didn't he? I mean, it was, that really was a grim night for him. Yeah. But it does raise questions, though, about the future of the Prime Minister. We know he's a bit of a Marmite figure for a lot of Tory voters. Now, it's interesting because the Conservative leader of Carlisle Council he's repeated his views that he thinks the PM should go as a result of all of this. I think we do need to bear in mind that, I mean, he admits he was a Remainer and never liked Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, so perhaps his view is a little bit tainted. But this is going to increase some of the rumblings, isn't it?
Well, you rightly highlighted the background to the leader of Carlisle. And of course, I'm deeply disappointed whenever we lose good Conservative councillors. But I've been touring the country, certainly out of London and the South East, knocking on doors. And of course, people are frustrated. But I think people's frustration is more at hearing constantly this noise in Westminster. And they're saying, can the government actually get on with the job of delivering? Can we show the kind of boldness that we showed with getting that vaccine programme, fastest vaccine rollout in Europe, not once, twice, but 3 times. The kind of boldness we showed in breaking through the barriers and getting Brexit done. They want that kind of boldness and determination in dealing with the problems the country is facing right now, not least the war in Ukraine and the impact on the cost of living. And I think Boris can provide exactly that.
Oliver Dowden, forgive me for jumping in. But, you know, when you look at the boldness you talked about with the pandemic, that was an urgent situation. And admittedly, the government acted very quickly. A lot of people would say the cost of living crisis now, for an awful lot of people, is absolutely desperate. And yet nothing is happening in the immediate sort of time scale. So why not? Why isn't something being done about green levy, about net zero targets, about some of the VAT on fuel, some of the national insurance rises? Why isn't the government acting immediately on these sort of issues?
Well, first, I think you're absolutely right to highlight this. In my experience, that's what people are talking about around the kitchen table or in their front rooms, how they're going to pay the bills. And we have taken action. We've taken unprecedented action, actually, over £22 billion worth of support. They may sound like dry things, but, for example, increasing the taper for universal credit, that helps people on lowest incomes by £1,000 a year. Increasing the national minimum wage helps people by another £1,000 a year. We've cut fuel duty by 5p. That helps families about £100 a year. And actually, we have started cutting taxes, and I think it's absolutely right that we should do so. So, for example, we've increased the threshold for national insurance contributions. That will be coming in July. The Chancellor has announced plans for further tax cuts down the line. And when it comes to green levies and so on, I think it's really important that we have a sense of balance and proportion about this. Now, of course, I'm a Conservative. I believe in conserving our environment. We need to protect our environment for the long term, but we can't have the madness of closing down our own oil and gas production in the North Sea and then importing it from places like Russia and elsewhere. And that's why we've shown a commitment to actually getting that investment back into the North Sea in the face of opposition from people like Nicola Sturgeon.
Interesting, you said that you've been doing some campaigning yourself. What were the biggest issues that came up on the doorstep It wasn't Partygate, was it? It was probably cost of living.
Yeah, look, as you might imagine, a range of issues came up on the doorstep, and of course, cost of living came up a lot on the doorstep, and it should be no surprise that it has. The situation that we're facing now is one that some of your viewers may recall. It's more like the kind of challenges we faced in the 70s and 80s, whereby we've got these two things hitting us at once. The big increase in oil and gas prices because of what's happening in Ukraine, and the impact on on supply chains as we come out of COVID. Basically, we need to produce a lot more stuff again. China's locked down and so on. All of that is pushing up prices, not just here, pushing up in America, pushing them up across Europe. And that's what the government has to take action in relation to, and that's what people want us to do. I've outlined some of the measures we're taking, but actually a cabinet just a couple of weeks ago, the Prime Minister is challenging us to find more things that we can do to cut the cost of living and to help people.
OK, look, Oliver Dowden, it's really good to talk to you, as always. Are you going to pop over to our studios one of these days and come and join us for a chat on set?
I would absolutely love to, and we'll find the time to do it. As you might imagine, I'm doing quite a few of these interviews this morning, so we're trying to pack them in back-to-back, but I'd love to come and speak to you in person. Let's find the time for it.
We'll look forward to that. Thanks very much indeed.
Again, another lovely sunny morning in Westminster.
Looks gorgeous, doesn't it? You've got to nail them down when you've got them.
I think that's why I've noticed you doing that.
Yeah,
make them
nail
promise.
them down.
Yeah.
Come on in.
Yes,
have a chat. But
so much to talk
they're doing
about.
the rounds, as they call it, at the
Yeah.
minute. So they're popping from one studio to another. All down in Westminster.
Anyway, shall we move on to some royal news now?
Ooh, yes.
If I said to you, Archie Mountbatten Windsor, would you know who that was?
Off the top of my head, to be honest, I wouldn't.
No, you'd have to think, wouldn't you? Well, of course, he's Archie, the son of Prince Harry and Meghan. And he's celebrating his 3rd birthday today with his parents, not here, but in California.
It just doesn't sound right, does it? The Duchess of Cambridge has also, in royal news, become the patron of the Maternal Mental Health Alliance, and the Queen is reportedly not attending any more garden parties at Buck House.
That'll be sad, but she's not so mobile anymore, so other people will be drafted in to do her bit. Let's talk to our royal reporter, Cameron Walker. Hi there.
Hello. Good
Hello. I mean, the Queen is doing... She's all right. They just decided on announcing, which is odd, announcing what she will and what she will not be at.
I think she is OK, like you say, but let's remember what a garden party is, first of all. So it's a tradition, 3 or 4 happen a year, where communities up and down the country who have done good deeds and volunteering work gets to be thanked by the monarch or member of the royal family in person. But it's a lot of standing, and Her Majesty would traditionally come out on the veranda at the back of Buckingham Palace and then have to kind of negotiate down 10 very steep steps to the lawn and then greets lots of people, 8,000 people per party, which is a lot of people, a lot of standing around. And we know she has mobility issues, so I think Buckingham Palace have taken the decision ahead of time so it doesn't overshadow the garden parties that she will be represented by other members of the royal family.
I think it's fair enough at 96, 96.
96, yeah, exactly. You come out of that the room there, they call the bow room, I think, and then you have to go down very steep steps, actually, sort of concrete steps. And then just by meeting and greeting, she probably walks miles, doesn't she, when she normally does it. And I can see that somewhere along the line they decided that just is too much. But she is going to go to the state opening of Parliament. That's what we've been told so far.
Yes, so from my understanding, she does plan still to go to the state opening of Parliament. But I think with all these things, they are starting to decide on the day if Her Majesty is well enough to attend. Prince Charles, we're expecting, perhaps will accompany her. But there is a precedent for this if she feels unable to go to Parliament and read the speech. So she's not read the speech on 2 occasions before. That was when she was heavily pregnant with Prince Andrew in 1959 and Prince Edward in 1963 or 62. Both times it was read by the Lord Chancellor. So in this case, Dominic Raab would read the speech in her place if she feels unable to attend. But from my understanding, she very much still plans to. But we simply are not going to find out.
Charles do it now.
Well, it says in the Times that it may be Prince Charles this time.
Exactly. We have seen newspaper reports that Prince Charles perhaps could read it. It's never happened before. The heir to the throne has never read the speech in the monarch's place, and we don't have confirmation. It's just speculation. But yes, that is being reported, and it's a possibility.
Good practice for him.
Yes, he would. Yes, he would. He's got to do it, hasn't he? But you know, when we see them arrive, the royals arrive at the state opening of Parliament, they get out of the car, and then there is a very steep staircase that they always come up.
Yes.
Yes.
So I'm a bit worried there that there are too many stairs for her. I wonder if there's a lift that she can take.
There is a lift. So over the last couple of years, she has used a lift to go up,
good.
but she still has to walk all the way through the robing room into the Lord's chamber, and then negotiate more steps up to the throne within the House of Lords. So again, it's mobility, and it's being seen. She doesn't want to be perhaps seen to be using a wheelchair or using a walking stick in those kind of situations. We know that, going back to the garden parties, the Queen Mother used a golf buggy, so that has been talked about. But it's, I don't think she wants to be seen perhaps in a wheelchair.
I can't see the Queen wanting to be in a golf buggy somehow.
No, the Queen Mother was a bit sort of cheekier, wasn't she?
Yeah.
I think I get that. Well, you get that impression, not as if I ever met her. What's a pity. Lovely, thank you very much indeed. Catch up with you a little bit later on, Cameron. But stay with us, we've got plenty more still to come for you, including the very latest on those local election results.
Good morning, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's a fine start in the south, but cloudier in the north with outbreaks of rain for central and southern Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. Brighter skies will follow as the rain clears during the afternoon. The rain is sinking slowly southwards across the country on the top of an area of high pressure. That means that increasingly the rain will fragment as it moves south, but it's certainly got some heavy bursts within it at the moment for Northern Ireland, for the central belt into southern Scotland, and then it reaches parts of northern England and North Wales by lunchtime. So damp afternoon to come for central zones, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland, the skies do brighten following that rain, albeit with 1 or 2 showers and a fresher feel in the far north and northwest. But it's warm ahead of the rain, increasingly cloudy, I think, but could still achieve 22, 23 Celsius for the likes of London, mid to high teens elsewhere generally across much of the country. Into the evening, the rain does move south, but by this time it's just a weak feature, and so it's on and off light rain for most. And then it clears by dawn on Saturday. So for much of the country, it's a dry start to the weekend, clear spells, perhaps a chill in the air for Northern Ireland, for Scotland, for Northern England as well, particularly in any sheltered spots. And then Saturday itself looks, for the vast majority, dry and bright. A few exceptions, some mistiness lurking around the coast of West Wales and the southwest, perhaps, as well as the east of England. And cloud building in places, particularly central and southern Scotland, northern and eastern England. A few showers where that happens. But for the vast majority, it's looking dry, it's looking bright, and where we get enough sunshine, temperatures into the low 20s, particularly in the south, I think mid to high teens further north. Sunday's looking very similar, plenty of sunny spells, some outbreaks of rain in the far northwest of Scotland, otherwise dry for many, and similar on Monday.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Morning to you. It is 9 o'clock. It's Friday, the 6th of May. It is the results day for the local elections. And this is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Dan.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio and online. So whatever you're doing today, you can take us with you. You can't miss a thing.
No. Coming up for you this morning, we'll have the very latest results from the local elections. Has it been as bad for the Tories as some predicted? Have the Labour Party really done as well as they'd hoped?
Our local reporters are standing by right now across the UK to bring you all you need to know.
If that wasn't enough, our sports guru Paul Coit will be here alongside former England keeper Paul Robinson a little bit later on, so stay tuned for that.
So it's not just politics we're talking about.
No.
We are the People's Channel, so your views drive what we do. So make sure you get in touch today. You can email us gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews.
So results are being declared from English councils following the local elections. More than half of English councils have been counting overnight, the rest getting underway this morning.
Yeah, the Conservatives have so far lost control of 6 councils, with Labour taking control of 3. The Lib Dems have also made some gains, taking Kingston upon Hull from Labour.
Now, 3 symbolic London councils have been lost by the Conservatives. That's come as a bit of a blow to them. They're perhaps not totally unexpected. Westminster, Barnet and Wandsworth. Westminster had been controlled by the Tories since 1964, Wandsworth since 1978, and they're now in Labour's hands.
It's a difficult set of results, particularly in London, and you've highlighted some of those. But equally, we've made gains elsewhere, whether that's Hartlepool, Nuneaton or Thurrock. And this is against the backdrop, as you say, of us being midterm, all those kind of headlines. I think when you take all of that, it doesn't demonstrate that Labour has the momentum to get into government.
Well, counts in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland begin this morning, with all 32 Scottish councils and 22 Welsh local authorities being contested.
In Northern Ireland, Sinn Féin and the DUP are battling to be the largest party in the Assembly. No seats declared on that as yet, but that's going to be an interesting one to watch.
Well, as the results continue to come in, we're delighted to be joined by our reporters from right across the UK. Our Scotland reporter David Donaldson joins us from South Ayrshire. Our London reporter Alice Porter is in Wandsworth, and our national reporter Paul Hawkins in Dudley.
Yes, so let's go to Davy first and foremost. What's happening there? When are we expected to get the first results through, Davy?
I think we expect to get the first results sometime around from about...
Oh, dear. Apologies, we'll get that sorted out. Sounds like a Dalek.
Something, yes, it did sound like a Dalek, yeah.
We'll get you sorted out, Davy, in just a second. In the meantime, let's go to Alice Porter, who's in London, where it has to be said, Alice, a pretty grim night for the Conservative Party. I mean, particularly when you look at places like Wandsworth.
Absolutely. It's been a terrible night for the Conservatives in London, and to lose Wandsworth, which was very much the crown jewel for the Conservatives in London. I mean, they've held the seat for over 40 years, so to lose it to Labour in this way, it really is a disaster for the Conservatives. I mean, this sort of shift that we've seen in Wandsworth to the left is really interesting. I mean, we've got about 75% of people who live in Wandsworth voted Remain, and I think that has been quite a key factor that we've seen in this local council election. So although Wandsworth has been a real blow for the Conservatives to lose that, it's also really significant that they've lost Barnet and the City of Westminster as well. Barnet being also quite significant because that was held by the Conservatives for about 20 years. Now, we've seen Keir Starmer, he's been out in Barnet today celebrating the success of bringing the borough back under Labour's control. And I think crucially, he sort of talked about that he's brought in change because it's got a very high Jewish population situation there. And I think when we had Jeremy Corbyn, who was the Labour leader, there were problems in 2018 around Labour's handling of anti-Semitism. But I think what we have seen with this result, with Keir Starmer out today, with the success in Barnet, and it's that change in leadership that we've seen in Labour has made a real difference in the ballot box. And unfortunately for the Conservatives, they've been the ones paying the price.
Yeah, it's interesting, actually, Alice, that one of our viewers has got in touch. Audrey says the Tories will never win London again. Is that the feeling, do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting shift away, isn't it? I mean, in London, we've had over 2/3 of London has already been Labour, so it's always been a sort of a red sort of seat within the sort of wall of the blue in the southeast of England. But I think this shift is very, very significant. And I think although turnout in local elections is generally quite low, it is an opportunity for people to show their discontent with a wider sort of political outlook. And a lot of people I've been speaking to in different boroughs across London are very frustrated with Boris Johnson, whether it's issues to do with the cost of living, issues to do with Partygate. And I think we've really seen that in the local elections over the last 24 hours.
OK, Alice, thank you. Let's head to Dudley then and Paul Hawkins. What's been happening there, Paul?
Yeah, very different picture to London here. The Conservatives holding on to Dudley Council. They didn't lose. Overall, the number of councillors hasn't been lost. They haven't made any gains either. Labour did pick up a few seats, which was a better performance compared to last year when they lost 11 seats. We can speak now to the Conservative leader of the council, Patrick Harley. Patrick, thanks for speaking to us on GB News. And you are still the leader of the council. How pleased are you with last night's performance?
Against the backdrop of what's happening nationally, I'm extremely pleased with the performance of the Conservatives locally here in Dudley. We entered this campaign with 46 seats and we leave it still with 46 seats and a very commanding majority over our Labour opposition.
Yeah, but you did lose a few members, a few people in your team, especially your member for health in Wollaston.
That's right. I mean, politics is always bittersweet. We win, we lose, there is nothing in between. And although we picked up a massive gain from Labour in St James's Ward, which traditionally for over 40 years had been a really safe Labour seat, we won our second successive seat there. Unfortunately, bittersweet moment where we lose colleagues, in other words, lost 2 colleagues. But we gained 3 seats overall, and I think against the backdrop of national politics, that has to be a really good success story for Dudley Conservatives.
Yeah, how do you think? I mean, we've heard a lot about voters in London voting along national issues, along things like Partygate. What do you think the people of Dudley have been voting on? Local issues or national, or a bit of both?
A combination of both, and we could see that in the turnouts, particularly in some wards where they are traditional Labour strongholds, where we won quite easily last year, and yet this year, against that backdrop of a tough national background, we were snapping at their heels in their so-called safe seats. So a good night for the Conservatives locally, and I don't think the Labour Party locally really have a lot to crow about, because some of those so-called safe seats they only hung on to by majorities of just 100 or a couple of hundred. And without that national backdrop, I think they could have had more losses, quite similar to what they had last year.
Yeah, and going forward for the next 2 years, complacency, that's an enemy?
Certainly I think complacency with the Labour Party, no complacency amongst Dudley Conservative Group. We will continue to campaign and strive to add to our number. I'd love to see this group go to 50 strong, and I'm sure over the next 2 years we'll achieve that.
Patrick, thanks for speaking to us. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Patrick Harley there, the leader of the Conservative-run council, still a Conservative-run council here in Dudley. It's interesting, Dudley, because it is a bit of a bellwether seat. Over the years, it's flitted between no overall control, Labour and the Conservatives. It's seen as a really good indicator of how the country is feeling nationally. And, of course, you've got Dudley North, the constituency, one of the Red Wall seats that switched to the Conservatives in 2019. Labour need to win back seats like that if they're going to return to power in 2 years' time. Just to give you what the Labour leader has said from Dudley Council, he's called it a successful night. He said unhappiness about what this government is doing in Westminster translated to the ballot box, and in his opinion, Labour is in a strong position in the next 2 years. Remember, the Labour Party did make a net gain of 3 seats, so they've moved forward. They've done better than last year when they lost 11 seats, but you would think that there is still some way to go if they're to have any chance of winning back more of the vote share here in Dudley in 2 years' time when we have a general election.
OK. Paul and Alice, thank you both very much indeed.
Thank you, yeah. Two very different.
Isn't it interesting
sides of
that
the
political spin you get even on a local level?
Oh, yes, of course.
Who do you believe? I mean, it's...
I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of people a bit disaffected generally. Mike says, I went to vote as I believe everyone should, but there was only ever the 3 main parties on the paper. I felt I had no choice who to put my cross next to.
Yeah, Robin Folkeson says we should have a box marked none of the above.
You're in favour of that, aren't you?
Yeah. A compulsory voting, so you have to go and vote, unless you've got a medical excuse or whatever. You have to go and vote, but if you don't want to vote for anyone, there's a none of the above box.
But what if you live in an area which always goes one way or the other? I mean, we've got Bob in Sheffield says, hi Bob, I decided not to bother voting yesterday because it would be a waste of time. Labour always win in my area. In fact, we've not even seen anyone bothering to campaign.
Yeah, well, look, I get it. I mean, it's very frustrating if the party you don't support always seems to win a seat. But things do change. You know, things do... I think Peter... one of the Red Wall seats, I'm sure, someone will correct me, but I think Hartlepool, which was Peter Mandelson. I mean, Peter Mandelson, who invented New Labour, turned blue, didn't it, last election?
Don't know.
So seats do change, things do change.
I don't know, in some green leafy shires, do they change? They're always Conservative, aren't they?
Yeah, well, some of them are.
I'm in a green leafy shire, and I almost feel... We didn't have any elections yesterday in my area, but you almost feel, what's the point? Because it always goes one way. Always.
Interesting. Let us know what you think. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Let's take you through the headlines at 11 minutes past 9.
A senior Ukrainian official says a new attempt is now underway to evacuate civilians trapped in the steelworks in Mariupol. Earlier, the Ministry of Defence confirmed that Russian forces have continued their ground assault for a second day. President Zelensky says the plant is being shelled.
Currently, Russian shelling and the assault on Azovstal do not stop, but civilians still need to be taken out. Women, children, many children remained there. Just imagine this hell. There are children there. More than 2 months of constant shelling, bombing, constant death nearby.
The average house price increased by more than £3,000 last month. Halifax reports property values went up for the 10th consecutive month. It's the longest run of continuous gains in 5 years.
The owner of British Airways recorded a heavy loss in the first 3 months of this year as the Omicron variant impacted passenger numbers. The International Airlines Group is announcing pre-tax losses of £916 million. But they do say they expect to be profitable in the second quarter of the year.
So there's our first view of Dragon Endurance making its re-entry to planet Earth.
A thermal cameras caught the moment the long-duration crew who'd left the International Space Station yesterday splashed down in the Gulf of Mexico. The crew had to be assisted from the capsule after spending 6 months in a near-weightless environment, but they did manage a wave for the cameras. It must be awful when you spend 6 months in microgravity to then come back to... It must feel really bad.
And it's not just the fact that you've been weightless, it's all your internal organs are weightless as well.
Yeah.
So actually your body, the inside of your body shifts around quite a lot, apparently. That must feel very strange, coming back to Earth. And coming back to Earth with a splash as well.
Yeah, quite something. Oh, dear. Now, voters in Northern Ireland were casting their votes yesterday, but for the Assembly, so a national election, verification of votes is underway. The results are expected, hopefully, some point this afternoon.
Well, our Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie joins us now for the latest from Belfast. So, Dougie, how's it going?
Well, as you have said, the verification of votes have only started here. The boxes were first opened at 8 o'clock this morning. Now, I have been looking behind me here. There is a lot of tally men that are counting those votes as they come out. That is a transferable vote. So they are counting who's 1, 2, 3, because this is all about transfers now. 90 MLAs in Northern Ireland are returned to the Assembly. 72 of those last time round depended on transfers. So it's about the management of the vote. The DUP, I have noticed, are looking nervous here. Now, they're only one seat clear of Sinn Féin. They had 28. Sinn Féin had 27. So there's no big, massive swing there. But because of what happened in the year before, the protocol, stuff around renewable heat incentive schemes and Irish language acts, this has been a very, very shaky Assembly. So now it appears that the likes of the DUP sit and watch them here as they count the tallies out. I do believe they haven't ran enough candidates. They've only ran 30, Sinn Féin have ran 34. In areas like Lagan Valley, where the First Minister was standing along with Jeffrey Donaldson, they've only ran 2 candidates. There could have been a possible third there, the one that is in without a mandate, that 5th seat. That could well go to the Alliance Party. Areas like South Down as well, I see them. What we're looking at coming out of the boxes, Forsyth looks to have polled quite well there, and she is the DUP. Sinn Féin's vote, well, the turnout for the vote in areas like Fermanagh, South Tyrone is down to about 64%. These areas are usually polling about 70-72%. So it's all to play for, and it's all about the transfer of votes. But what I have seen coming out of these boxes, there is no doubt that the Alliance Party have polled well on first preference votes. We did think that would happen, and if they pick up the transfers, and that's what this is all about, and it will be crucial where those transfers go, you may even see them getting into the top 2.
OK. Doogie, thank you. There's one to watch.
Yes, absolutely. It's all happening.
It is, isn't it? I'll tell you what, Hillary's been in touch. Morning, Hillary. Said, any thoughts on Bristol, where they had, on top of everything else going on, they had a referendum on their mayors, their locally elected mayor. And they've
decided to do away with the local elected mayor.
Yeah. I didn't know that there was...
I thought mayors were very popular nowadays.
Maybe. Do you know what? I don't like the idea of them. Got to be honest.
Why?
Because I sort of think it's a bit like the police and crime commissioners. It concentrates too much power in one person's hands. I sort of think for a community...
Yeah, but at least you get the feeling, as a city like with London or Greater Manchester or something, you get the feeling that somebody's in charge of that city, though. And that's rather good, isn't it?
I don't know. I think London's a different setup, but for places like Bristol, and I wouldn't like it. I've never had the opportunity. It's never come up in any area I've lived, but I wouldn't like it. I've got to be honest. Don't quite know why.
On the subject of Oxford University, we've been hearing all morning that Oxford University is going to allow 20 Ukrainian students free places at the university and a sort of grant as well to keep them going. And a lot of people have been feeling that, hang on a minute, doesn't charity begin at home? And why should we be handing out free places and subsistence to Ukrainian students when we don't to our own? Well, Lucy says, I would like to congratulate Oxford University on offering fully funded places for Ukrainian students who have had to flee Ukraine. For all those viewers who are moaning about this morning, about Brits not being offered free places, perhaps they would like their children to be bombed constantly over several weeks and then be unable to attend their own universities and then have to leave everything they know and love to survive. Our UK students have a roof over their heads, food and water, their families safe at home and their universities still standing.
Well, it's a point.
That told us off.
It's a point. Quick one about interest rates, because they've gone up yesterday 1%. It's meant to try to curb inflation. How these things work, the mechanics of it all is a bit beyond me, but the experts think that's what you need to do. Dawn in Leicester says, I'm 66. Oh, no, that's what... Patricia in Brighton, this is what I want. Sorry, Dawn, I'll come back to you later on.
But at least we know her age.
Yeah, just says, our mortgage interest during the 1990s peaked at 14%. It was a struggle then, but we did get through it, and it crippled a lot of people, those interest rates.
Absolutely. Well, we've got lots more to talk about. After the break, we'll be speaking to former Spurs and England goalkeeper Paul Robinson. First of all, though, with the weather.
Good morning, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's a fine start in the south, but cloudier in the north with outbreaks of rain for central and southern Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. Brighter skies will follow as the rain clears during the afternoon. The rain is sinking slowly southwards across the country on the top of an area of high pressure. That means that increasingly the rain will fragment as it moves south, but it's certainly got some heavy bursts within it at the moment for Northern Ireland, for the central belt into southern Scotland, and then it reaches parts of northern England and North Wales by lunchtime. So damp afternoon to come for central zones, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland, the skies do brighten following that rain, albeit with 1 or 2 showers and a fresher feel in the far north and northwest. But it's warm ahead of the rain, increasingly cloudy, I think, but could still achieve 22, 23 Celsius for the likes of London, mid to high teens elsewhere generally across much of the country. Into the evening, the rain does move south, but by this time it's just a weak feature, and so it's on and off light rain for most. And then it clears by dawn on Saturday. So for much of the country, it's a dry start to the weekend, clear spells, perhaps a chill in the air for Northern Ireland, for Scotland, for Northern England as well, particularly in any sheltered spots. And then Saturday itself looks, for the vast majority, dry and bright. A few exceptions, some mistiness lurking around the coasts of West Wales and the southwest, perhaps, as well as the east of England. And cloud building in places, particularly central and southern Scotland, northern and eastern England. A few showers where that happens. But for the vast majority, it's looking dry, it's looking bright, and where we get enough sunshine, temperatures into the low 20s, particularly in the south, I think mid to high teens further north. Sunday's looking very similar, plenty of sunny spells, some outbreaks of rain in the far northwest of Scotland, otherwise dry for many, and similar on Monday.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back.
Yes. It's 9:23. Yes. This is Stephen and Anne. Good morning.
Yes.
Whether you're watching us on TV, listening to us on the radio, we're struggling because Paul Coyte's here, and it appears to be sat on a spring.
He's squeaking.
I'm squeaking. I don't know whether it's me or whether it is actually the stool that's squeaking. I am really hoping it's the stool as well.
We really need WD-40 in here.
We really do. Yeah.
And that got an interesting conversation. You missed it, you see. You weren't here. It got a really interesting conversation going about why WD-40 is indeed called WD-40.
Water displacement 40th formula?
That is called a conversation of men of a certain age, Anne.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing we talk about,
Yes,
you
it
see.
is, isn't it?
I think you'll find it's very, very interesting.
I think you'll find. I may even buy a job lot and bring some in next week if you play your cards right.
Wait till it comes up in a pub quiz, you'll know.
Oh, dear me. Look, there's lots going on in the world of sport, particularly in football.
There is, and you know, I don't know how I'm going to make a link to WD-40 to one of the finest goalkeepers that we've had. I have no idea. So I will just move seamlessly to it. There's so much football going on. Of course, during the week, we've had so much European football as well, and very important domestic games as well. Now, Paul Robinson, former Leeds goalkeeper, former Tottenham Hotspur goalkeeper, we have for us right now. Morning, Paul. Did you know about the WD-40, by the way? I'm sure that was something that you learned very early on in your career.
I certainly didn't, mate, no, but I could do with some before I play golf these days on the knees and the back.
Listen, I do want to talk to you that firstly, before we actually get to the Premier League, because there's some huge games going on involving clubs that you've been involved in over the years. But I want to talk to you about Geronimo Rulli. Now, this is the goalkeeper of Villarreal, played against Liverpool in the week, and it was one of those, I don't know, it was just like a real clanger of a performance, but as a pro, and I don't know whether there's a goalkeepers union thing where you're very careful about what you say about other keepers, but what did you make on that? Twice through the legs. There was one where he came running out for no reason whatsoever. What did you make, and what's his future got in store now, do you think?
Well, it was one of them days, wasn't it? I mean, from a goalkeeper's point of view, yeah, we do have a goalkeepers union, and you don't generally tend to talk out of school. But now I'm on the other side of the fence in the media. You can speak honestly and criticise. I just think he was just really poor, and I think when you play like that, you do have bad days at the office, as everyone does. But the worst thing you can do as a goalkeeper is go looking to put it right, go looking for something to do, which you could see him doing. He was coming out of his box. He was trying to rectify his mistakes earlier by doing things that he shouldn't be doing. And he was just making constant bad decisions. His earlier error led to his bad decision-making, his bad performance, and he was trying to atone for an error, which is what led him to play so poorly.
Isn't there that rule where if it's going great, you stay the same, if it's going bad, you stay the same? You're just completely level if you're a great goalkeeper, right?
Yeah, it's a difficult mentality. I mean, it's easy now we're older and with hindsight, and you all fall into the trap when you're younger of trying to put things right. But you have to have what I call now as a golfer's mentality. What's gone is gone. There's nothing you can do. So you look at Tiger Woods a couple of years ago, for example, in the Masters. He shot a 10 on a par 3. I mean, that would be me, clubs in the water, gone, finished. He birdied the next 3 holes. And a goalkeeper's mentality has to be the same. You cannot change what's just happened. You have to have a good performance between then and the end of the game. And he was just unable to do that. It was a mental weakness that he showed in the game.
10 on a par 3 is pretty good for me. I just thought I'd let you know that. But let's look anyway forward to the weekend. I mentioned Liverpool then, Villarreal. Liverpool and Manchester City in this fight then for the title, and it's your former club, Tottenham Hotspur, having to go up to Anfield tomorrow night. Can Spurs get anything out of this, or is there any hope? Because it's always been a pretty bad hunting ground for Tottenham over the years. I mean, there was one time, it was like 72 years where Spurs never won. That hoodoo was broken. But what do you think about tomorrow?
Well, it just depends which Spurs is going to turn up, doesn't it? I mean, we've seen the inconsistency of them this season. We've seen them have a fantastic result away at Manchester City and then get beaten against Burnley in the week after following that game. I think that's what's cost Spurs not having 4th place already sealed up this season. I think between them and Arsenal, that the inconsistency, not picking up points where they should have picked up points, it's going to be a tough game for Spurs. I mean, Liverpool are on the high, obviously getting into the Champions League final. And it's a different mentality for Manchester City, who are lower than a snake's belly at the moment, especially after the result in midweek. They've got to have to pick themselves up and go again against Newcastle. It's a home game for them, which will be an easier task than going away to St James's. But Liverpool are in a great place at the moment. They're competing on all fronts. They're in the Champions League final, and it's going to be a very, very difficult game for Spurs to go up there. You look at Liverpool's fixtures, you look at Manchester City's fixtures. You wouldn't expect either of them to lose another game between now and the end of the season. I think on paper, it's a tough ask for Spurs to go there, but they can cause them problems. We've seen the front three of Son, Kane, Kulusevski. On their day, they can cause anybody a problem, but then they go 2 games without creating a chance or a shot on goal. So, yes, Liverpool will have to be at the best to beat Spurs, but Spurs can cause them problems, and it's an opportunity. Listen, Spurs have got to win to finish 4th. Everybody talks about this North London derby that's coming up. It's a huge game between them and Arsenal, which decides 4th place, the Champions League spot. But like I said to you before, the inconsistency that they both have. If we're talking about Liverpool and Manchester City, you'd say, yes, they'll win every game around that London derby, and that's the decider. But with these two teams, you just don't know.
So as far as Spurs are concerned, then, I mean, I saw you, of course, undercover there with hat and glasses on at the Brentford game, where it almost seems, and a lot of Spurs fans are saying this, it may suit them better to go up to Anfield and play Liverpool than playing Brighton or playing Brentford, because they might open up a little bit more. Am I clutching at straws, do you think?
No, you're not. I mean, you look at the way that they performed against Manchester City. They went up to Manchester, they took the game to them. They played a different style. They attacked them. They got in behind them, and they got the win that nobody expected them to get. Regardless of who Spurs play, you don't know what team's going to turn up. And like I say, the inconsistency has been the issue for them all season. And Arsenal seem to have been picking up some consistency at the right time. I mean, they've gone to Chelsea and won. They've beaten Manchester United at home, and they've gone to West Ham and won. 3 games on the bounce, which is 3 massive results for them. So it's going to be a really interesting running. But like you say, regardless of who Spurs play, but they do tend to play better against the bigger sides. If Liverpool are going to open up and come and attack Spurs, it leaves space in behind.
Yeah, I've got to ask you about Leeds United. Of course, this is the club that you started at, spent your early careers where you made your name. Things not looking too great for Leeds. You know, we've got Jesse Marsh there. We've got the American coach that's come in. Seemed like everything was going to change after Bielsa went. They've got to play Arsenal, and now they're in that relegation battle. I mean, how are you feeling about Leeds? Because it's almost between them and Everton at the moment, it seems, for that other place.
Well, Burnley somewhere they've done a massive Lazarus act. You know, they've started winning games. The points that they've picked up is incredible what they've done, and they've put Leeds and Everton right in the mire. A couple of weeks ago, Leeds had a great result at home, and they went away to Watford, got a result, and you're thinking, you know, that's them going to be safe. You know, you're thinking the gap between them and the bottom 3, it was big enough where this season it looks like at one point 5 or 6 weeks ago that 35, 36 points was going to be enough to keep you safe. And it might even be more than that this year, just simply because of the way that Burnley have played. Leeds are in trouble. I think they've got a big game this weekend, and then they've got another big fixture the week after. They've got Brighton and Brentford in the last 2 games of the season, which is going to be pivotal for them. But they're winnable games on paper. But when you're in the bottom 3 and you're struggling and you desperately need a win, those games take on a completely different complexion. You know, it's the nervousness, the anxiousness that comes on board in the dressing room with the players, with the manager. They all of a sudden become must-win games. Everton had a massive result against Chelsea last week. I mean, that was a huge blow for Leeds, and it's going to be a really tough fight to the finish for both Everton and Leeds and Burnley as well. Listen, they've had a couple of great results, but it's between the 3 of them who go down. I mean, it's going to be as interesting at the bottom as it is at the top.
It really is. And I'm going to ask, I'd never dream of asking you who you think's going to go down, but what's your gut feeling then, apart from the other 2? The bottom 2, who's the other one do you think is going to join the other 2, along with Watford and Norwich? What's your gut feeling at the moment, Paul?
Well, I've played for both Burnley and Leeds, and Leeds is my team. I still live up here, get to the club regularly. So I'd love to see Leeds stay up, and I'd love to see Burnley stay up. But Everton is a club that I admired. I used to love playing there at Goodison. I mean, the fans there, the support there. You look at their support last week against Chelsea, that's what got them over the line. And to think that a club of that stature could go out of the league, in all honesty, I wouldn't want to see any of the 3 go. But if I had to pick one, it'd be Everton.
OK. Listen, good to speak to you, Paul. We appreciate your time. Enjoy the weekend. Plenty of football coming up, and now back to the WD-40 department now.
Yeah, I tell you what, you're a cheeky devil, aren't you?
Why?
I wouldn't dream of asking you, but seeing as we're here...
It was a gut feeling, though. That wasn't the actual question, though, was it? It was just a gut feeling.
Ask. Yeah. I haven't heard that phrase, lower than a snake's belly.
I've never heard that.
I didn't think people said it. I thought it was a quirkiness of my own mum's.
Oh.
She used to say it.
Really?
Oh, he's lower than a snake's belly.
Oh,
and I've never, ever heard anyone say, other than my mum, say that.
Isn't that great? I'm going to try and throw it in a couple of times over the weekend.
You see, I find it very uncomfortable.
Do you?
Yeah, I'm cringing every time you say it, because how I was brought up is you don't say the B word.
Belly?
Oh, tummy. Tummy. I had the same, tummy.
Tummy.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
Tummy. So saying the B word was considered, you know, not nice.
B word?
Not nice.
I'm just thinking lower than a snake's tummy.
Right.
Well, no, that doesn't sound the same at all.
But isn't it funny how these quirks of language? I think that came from my nana, who didn't then my mum, but yeah, don't say.
Oh,
No.
Goodness, well, my mum said it all the time. Lower than a snake's belly.
Isn't it funny?
Hey, I've just read a story in The Sun. I just thought I'd share this with you, how it can happen, because I thought, wow, its twins have been born in New Cross Hospital in Wolverhampton, but they've got different birthdays.
What?
Because they were born either side of midnight.
Oh.
Isn't that interesting?
Does that make it better? I guess that makes it easier with presents. You've got a
Yeah.
day in lieu to buy the other set.
Yeah. I think that's
Maybe.
astonishing, isn't it?
There's always arguments over twins, over which one's the eldest.
Yeah.
Well, Nico came first, so he was born at 11:59, and then I can't pronounce his brother's.
Lecu or something.
Yeah. He followed at 1 minute, 2 minutes later. 2 minutes later, either side of.
Well,
midnight. I think
Are they
that's
identical? Does it say?
No.
It doesn't say. Oh. Delivered 8 weeks early.
Well, they're twins, and often twins will arrive early. 8 weeks is quite premature, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Still, they're quite good weights for that.
It's earlier than a snake's belly.
No, you mustn't say.
No.
We're not
I'll
allowed
get
to
it
say
right by
belly.
the weekend, I promise.
And while I am reading The Sun here, this is another nice one. Actress and Strictly Come Dancing champion Rose Ayling-Ellis is going to be the first celeb ever to tell a CBeebies bedtime story in sign language.
Excellent.
It'll be on Sunday. But she's been deaf since birth, of course.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, she's going to tell a bedtime story in sign language on Sunday. That's quite something, isn't it?
That's quite nice. I'd like to learn sign language.
I think we should all learn
I think it should
sign
be
language.
taught at school.
Yeah.
It'd be very interesting to do, but I think I'm probably too old now.
Never too old.
Now, look, there's still lots to talk about because we're going to stay with you right through until 10 this morning.
Hooray! Coming up after the break, Tom Harwood will be taking a look at the results. Stop it, Paul Coit. At the local elections so far and find out what it means for the major parties.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
$9:38 morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV, on your radio and online.
And online indeed. So, shall we bring you up to date with the latest headlines? A senior Ukrainian official says a new attempt is now underway to evacuate civilians who are still trapped in the steelworks in Mariupol. Earlier, the Ministry of Defence confirmed that Russian forces have continued their ground assault for a second day. President Zelensky says the plant is being shelled.
Currently, Russian shelling and the assault on Azovstal do not stop, but civilians still need to be taken out. Women, children. Many children remained there. Just imagine this hell. There are children there. More than 2 months of constant shelling, bombing, constant death nearby.
The average house price increased by more than £3,000 last month. Halifax says property values went up for the 10th consecutive month. That's the longest run of continuous gains in 5 years.
The owner of British Airways recorded a heavy loss in the first 3 months of this year as the Omicron variant impacted passenger numbers. The International Airlines Group is announcing pre-tax losses of £916 million, but say they do expect to be profitable in the second quarter of the year.
The man accused of attacking the comedian Dave Chappelle on stage at the Hollywood Bowl has been charged. 23-year-old Isaiah Lee faces 4 counts, including battery and possession of a weapon with intent to assault. Quite a bit on the voting, on the local elections, because we're saying about trying to get the turnout a bit high, because it's been so bad. Shelley says, I turned up to vote just to spoil my ballot paper. This will be recorded.
Yeah.
True.
Les says, if you can't be bothered to vote, then you've got no grounds to complain about anything political that then happens.
And Paul says, you know, go and spoil your paper. You don't, then it will at least will be counted and declared, which is a fair point. Well, those English councils have been counting their votes, spoilt or otherwise, overnight, with the results coming through in the early hours. Labour and the Lib Dems have been making some gains so far, as well as the Green Party.
Our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, is live in Westminster right now for more reaction.
Thanks, Anne. Yes, it is a pretty extraordinary situation, isn't it? Just almost coming up to 12 hours after polls have closed and the dust is beginning to settle. Well, let's get more reaction on what this means for the country and for our politics. I'm delighted to be joined live on College Green outside Parliament now by the former Labour advisor John McTernan and the Conservative commentator Tim Montgomery. John, first of all, the Labour Party advancing in London, but perhaps not so much elsewhere in the country.
Well, it's great to be here in the Labour borough of Westminster to be talking to you. And I think the symbolic nature of the win in Westminster will be worrying a lot of Tories. And I think, looking at the perspective, Boris Johnson's platform for becoming leader and now Prime Minister was because he could win London. So for the Tories to lose so badly in London, to say, oh, it's London, I think it should be a worry for them. And starting to look at the broader south and southeast, I think Labour making gains on the coast, the Liberals making gains in the southwest. It feels to me as though there's an anti-Tory coalition across the country, which when you map out the results, is going to be very worrying for backbench Tory MPs.
That's an interesting point. We've spoken a lot about London, but actually the southeast and the southwest, that's becoming a problem for the Conservatives as well.
Yeah, look, John is right to say that Labour have done well in London, but I don't think Tories expected, you know, Barnet and Wandsworth to stay blue. I think Westminster was a shocker, that's true. But overall, the Tories may be wrong about this, but they think they can defeat Labour. They don't think the focus has been on Labour yet in any way that will be the case during a general election. The Tories are much more worried, I think, about a Liberal Democrat surge. I call them the bindweed of politics. You call them the dry rot of politics. Once they sort of have invaded an area, you know, they hold on to an area. And the Tories aren't really sure of how to beat Lib Dems, you know, over a short period of time. And I think we're going to see results in Somerset, where every source I have tells me is going to be very bad. We've seen West Oxfordshire. We've seen other parts, like in Wimbledon, where the Liberal Democrats are showing the kind of tenacity and invasiveness that was true sort of 10, 20 years ago, before the coalition years. And that will be what will really worry Tory MPs, I think.
In the run-up to these elections, the Conservative Party chairman, Oliver Dowden, was talking about a potential pact that may have been done between the Liberal Democrats and the Labour Party. Now, we know that there was some sort of pact in 1997, or at least the beginnings of that. Is that what we're seeing now as well?
I think what we're seeing is a pact amongst the voters. The voters looking around which party can hit at the Tories the most. In some areas, like which party can hit at the ruling party in the council. So it could be the Lib Dems, it could be the Greens against the Labour Party. There is a local element, but I don't think there's any formal pact. There's no need for one. If the country's decided it wants to chuck the Tories out, then the country will use whichever party it wants. That, for me, would be the worry if I was a Tory, is that the Liberal Democrats outside London, the only people who can beat the Lib Dems in the southwest turned out to be the Lib Dems by going into coalition. They've got over the coalition thing now, so some areas returning to be Lib Dem, and you're going to see, I think, when we look at the national share of the vote and then apply it to the parliamentary seats, it feels to me you're going to see very efficient use by voters of their vote to send a message to the Tories. So it will not look like a massive Labour surge across the country, but it will look like a Tory collapse.
Just briefly, I think the one problem with this argument is the Greens. If the Greens start to invade too many of these sort of territories, that confuses the picture. And if people start to vote Green in significant numbers, and the Greens have done well in these elections, then that could be the difference in certain seats for the Liberals or Labour winning those tactical voting contests.
Yes, some of these councils, particularly in London, may look like they've been won by a large number of wards, but each ward has been won by a small number of votes. Potentially the vote share here may be a little bit closer. It will be a little bit of a while until we see the projected national share of the vote. But what would be a good result for Labour on that?
Labour in the lead, Labour showing substantial progress from 2019 national votes. And I think, look, Labour had its worst defeat since 1935. Some people say it was a near-death experience. I think it was death. Under Corbyn, the Labour Party was dead. It's coming back to life. So I would say if Labour are projected at getting something like 275 seats at the next election, which would be 75 gains, they would be in a strong position to say we will form a government after the next election, because no other party of any size can support the Tories after an election next time.
Although 75 gains would take the Labour Party up to 275 seats, 276 seats, we would spend a lot of time on this green, potentially for weeks and months after that election, as coalition negotiations were thrashed out.
No, not coalition negotiations. You only have coalition negotiations where different parties can go with other guys. The SNP have no choice but to put the Tories out. The Liberal Democrats have no choice but to put the Tories out. So a minority Labour government simply goes, it's us or the Tories. Vote for our Queen's speech or keep the Tories in. It's fine. We're happy to have a second election on that basis.
I worry if we look towards that. Is this not a similar situation to 1992? Would in some ways the Labour Party have been better served losing 92 and winning bigger in 97? Could potentially the Labour Party be better served losing the next election and then winning bigger the one after that?
It's never good to lose. There's no election that's good to lose, honestly. Being in government gives you the power of government. And the one thing the Tories have taught us under Boris Johnson, and Nicola Sturgeon, to be fair, in Scotland, is government can be a massive platform for campaigning. You can campaign from government, you can use government money, and you watch once Labour ministers were in the minority government, the cash would be splashed in the right places.
Well, let's turn now to Scotland, because, of course, the Conservative Party is expected to not do particularly well, potentially even worse than in London, sliding back to third place. Tim Montgomery, how bad is it for the Conservative Party in Scotland right now?
Well, of course, the Conservatives have done relatively well in Scotland recently. You know, the Conservatives were very much the third party for a long time in Scotland. So moving into second place, particularly under Ruth Davidson's leadership, was an achievement. Douglas Murray has got himself in some problems, you know, recently by saying that Boris Johnson should go as Tory leader, the Scottish Conservative leader, and then sort of going back on that. He's had a few difficult interviews in the campaign. Anna Samwire, the new Labour leader, is a much more competent figure. So it will be difficult for the Tories in Scotland. But the Tories don't really expect to ever have a majority in Parliament based on Scottish MPs. Labour, in contrast, look like they're going to celebrate moving into second place because of the overnight results. But actually, second place for Labour isn't anywhere near good enough if they hope to be a majority party in Westminster. They've got to start making much more sizable progress than they will do. And that's Labour's general problem in terms of general election positioning. They're just not anywhere near close enough to becoming a majority party. And so what you'll see from the Tories, you're talking about 1992 and 1997, Tom, this will be much more like 2015, when David Cameron was saying it's really a Conservative majority government offering stability to the country, what's going to be some sort of coalition of chaos, accepting John's point that it won't be a formal coalition, but a coalition of chaos with Labour, SNP, Lib Dems in constant sort of battles over to what priorities the government has.
It's a strong argument, I suppose, that idea of single-party government being one that is attractive. Although I suppose the Labour Party, on the other hand, could say that the years after 2015 weren't perhaps as stable as might have been advertised. But there is a concern there, though. That message potentially might be a strong one.
Yeah, look, I think 3 prime ministers since 2015 is not that stable. It's, the issue about elections is, in the end, the voters can't be wrong. We live in a democracy. So the voters will choose what they want to do. At the moment, it feels like these local elections are going to be everybody using the votes they can, and the candidates they can, to inflict damage on the Tories. If they did that in an election, a general election, what they'd be wanting is a balanced parliament, a minority government, a hung parliament, whatever you want to call it or characterise it. The issue, I think, can be well summed up by the Tories actually can't win without London. Labour can't win without Scotland. It looks as though both parties are in difficulties in London and in Scotland in different ways. In Scotland, Labour's opportunity for me is to become the unionist party, while the Scottish Tories are weak because of Boris Johnson. So Labour should now go. Anas Sarwar is a very likeable leader, very talented leader. He should be going to the seats that Labour used to hold, that the Tories now hold, to Stirling and to Ayr, up into Aberdeenshire, out into Edinburgh, and saying it's safe to vote unionist for the Labour Party. We had Corbyn, I get it, we've now got Starmer. You had, Ruth Davidson, I get it, but you've now got Boris Johnson. So a realignment in Scottish politics may well be one unionist party and one nationalist party. And Labour looks set to become able to say, we are the right unionist party for you in Scotland. And that, for me, is going to be the interesting tale out of Scotland.
So in our final 30 seconds, our last word to you, Tim Montgomery. Will Conservative MPs be looking at what is starting to take place today? Will they be looking again at the leadership of Boris Johnson, or has he just done about enough to survive this?
I fear he's done just about enough, and I say that as someone who wants him gone, because I think we're wasting this majority of 80. The Tories aren't really reforming the country in any significant way, and I really saw Partygate and all the controversy associated with it as the opportunity to get rid of a Prime Minister who really is only good when he's winning, and if he stopped winning, there's not really much of a point to Boris Johnson anymore. But unfortunately, I fear that he's going to carry on in office now.
Well, thank you both for your excellent analysis here on College Green this morning. It's been a really, really interesting conversation. Cheers for joining us. Thanks, back to you in the studio.
Tom, thank you very much indeed. I was fascinated when John McTernan, said, that at the end of the day, when it comes to an election, the voters aren't wrong. The voters have their say, and therefore that has to be right. Well, that's not what we were told during Brexit, was it? And everyone was there trying to reverse what the voters said.
That's true, yes, indeed.
So we should have talked to John McTernan then. There you go. Mike has been in touch. I don't agree with you, Mike, but you've got to, entitled to your view. He said, if you don't vote, you have no say. Wrong, says Mike. I pay my taxes and have all the same vocal rights as the next person. No vote, no say is just propaganda by political parties.
I don't know. Pete says to vote, a person must have trust and belief in the political party. If you don't have any of those, why vote?
So is it,
See, your argument, you'd say that you must vote. Everybody should be mandated to vote.
And then just tick a none of the above if you're... But also, you could say, vote for the party that you agree with the most.
Or the least worst.
The least worst, if that's how you view it.
Gloria says, how can you vote if you don't know anything about the candidates? We haven't seen anyone canvassing or even had flyers through the door where we live, so what's the point?
Yeah, you do get a bit of that, don't you? Which is, see, interestingly, I've had 2 from the Tories, where I live, and I've had about 35. I mean, literally 35 from Labour.
Gosh.
And you say, how much is that?
All saying different things, or the same thing?
No, different things.
Oh, right.
It's been like a relentless push. So whether it makes a difference or not, I don't know, because I haven't declared where I live yet, so we shall see.
Earlier, you were saying that you didn't agree with voted in mayors. You know, mayoral voting.
Yes, it just...
And Peter, the retired district councillor, says, I am with you. A city mayor is just one more unnecessary layer of local government. But Cathy says, now you see, she comes from Bristol, where they have just voted against having a mayoral vote. She says, I've lived in Bristol since 1980 and the city was a lovely place till we got the politics of the mayor. When one person can dictate what's happening and his politics is one way, it's not good.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I know a lot of people, like Andy Burnham, Mayor of Greater Manchester, is seen to do a very good job. But he, presumably, like the London Mayor, will have a sort of cabinet of people round him, because it's a very big area. For these slightly smaller areas, I do wonder if it is just almost a bit presidential, as it were.
It is quite presidential. Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, over the last 24 hours, has said that Beergate is equivalent to Partygate. So he's going to get in trouble with Keir Starmer, isn't he? But, of course, he doesn't have to toe the party line because he is a mayor, so he can say what he thinks.
Interesting, we've talked about the cost of living, because it was apparently top of everyone's agenda when they've done all the surveys ahead of the local elections. And we all come up with ideas that we do this, freeze food we were talking about today, turn the lights off, yada, 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 all these little bits and bobs. We've had a few like this from Jill, which I've still not looked into. Jill says, yes, we can switch off the lights, etc., but the daily standing charge for my electricity has almost doubled, and there's nothing anyone can do about that.
Absolutely.
See, why have standing charges gone up? If it's the price of fuel that's increased, why has the standing charge gone up so dramatically?
It's the cost of infrastructure. That's what they always say about things like that, isn't it?
But that's the problem.
The cost of the administration of it all. The paperwork.
There is absolutely nothing you can do about that.
The computers that keep the bills coming through your letterbox.
Yeah, they never get that.
The cost of running all of that goes up, doesn't it? Anyway, whatever.
They get that wrong, do they?
We are going to be back with you tomorrow, bright and early, 6 o'clock.
Yes, but up next, we've got our local election special.
Good morning, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. It's a fine start in the south, but cloudier in the north with outbreaks of rain for central and southern Scotland as well as Northern Ireland. Brighter skies will follow as the rain clears during the afternoon. The rain is sinking slowly southwards across the country on the top of an area of high pressure. That means that increasingly the rain will fragment as it moves south, but it's certainly got some heavy bursts within it at the moment for Northern Ireland, for the central belt into southern Scotland, and then it reaches parts of northern England and North Wales by lunchtime. So damp afternoon to come for central zones, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland, the skies do brighten following that rain, albeit with 1 or 2 showers and a fresher feel in the far north and northwest. But it's warm ahead of the rain, increasingly cloudy, I think, but could still achieve 22, 23 Celsius for the likes of London, mid to high teens elsewhere generally across much of the country. Into the evening, the rain does move south, but by this time it's just a weak feature, and so it's on and off light rain for most. And then it clears by dawn on Saturday, so for much of the country,